What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto became the lost Baratheon prince destined to save Westeros? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Many know of the three children of King Robert Baratheon: Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen Baratheon. All three royal children of the king and his beautiful queen Cersei of House Lannister. But what many do not know, is there was one child prior to those three being born, and unlike the three mentioned children, this one child was actually Robert's by blood legitimately. The official story behind the child to those who knew of him, was he had been stillborn, and did not survive long enough to breathe air into his lungs. It was a devastating blow to the king and queen when it happened, and many mourned the loss of Robert's firstborn son. Again, it was the official story. The unofficial story? The boy lived to scream like any baby screamed when brought into the world on a night where a storm howled outside of the Red Keep. The most violent storm ever recorded in the history of Westeros, to be exact. And like any baby once born in the Seven Kingdoms, his father was in the room, inspected him to see his features in the child to confirm it was indeed his own. When King Robert first laid eyes on the child, the king saw the signs of his own features in the form of darker shade of blonde hair, and the intense blue eyes only a true Baratheon of his line could possess. While a bit disappointed his son would not have black hair like himself, Robert had been pleased to know at least the boy would have his eyes and not those green eyes House Lannister was known to possess on their side. Listen to the boy scream out. Ours is fury. Do you hear him, Cersei? There is fury in his scream. Like a warrior taking a sword or hammer to his enemy. My son will be strong. Like his father. A fury like no others. A Mailstrom. Yes, that's what I'll name you. In old Valyrian tongue, my grandmother said there was a name for such a person. Naruto. Yes, that is what I will name you, boy. Naruto of House Baratheon, my son, exclaimed Robert happily while laughing. But then something happened. Something that neither Robert, Cersei, the hand of the King Jon Arryn, the handmaidens assisting the queen, or the Grand Maester there to see this event could explain it. The child was screaming even louder, thrashing about to the point where Robert almost dropped him, and had to put the boy on the bed. To the shock of those in the room, the eyes of the child, now named Naruto of House Baratheon, had changed drastically. One eye shifted from blue to red with a strange Tomo design, and the other shifted to that of purple with a ripple design. What has happened? Asked Cersei in a weak voice, since she had spent what felt like the longest hours of the night screaming out in pain giving birth to this one child. I don't know. Grand Maester Pycelle, look at his eyes. Why does one look demon red and the other like the eye of a fucking Targaryen? Commanded Robert angrily while the maester in question gave the boy a once-over. It is hard to say, your grace. It is possible that some of the Targaryen features from your grandmother's side of the family has manifested itself in the one eye, and the other is different due to your Baratheon blood clashing with your grandmother's Targaryen ancestry, said Pycelle while carefully examining the boy's eyes. Fucking Targaryens. Even now, that fucking dragon mocks me after they have been all killed off. Exclaimed Robert angrily before glaring at the boy sporting an eye similar to the house he hated beyond measure. What do you intend to do, your grace? Asked Pycelle while Robert thought long and hard about this in his mind. Robert, don't kill him. He's still my baby. And yours, pleaded Cersei in her weakened state while Robert himself looked from her to the baby before his rage dimmed. Just a bit. Raise him in secret for now. Until I say otherwise, the child is stillborn, replied Robert before he left the room in a huff and let out a scream of rage at this turn of events. His son had Targaryen features. Targaryen, from Robert's grandmother's side of the family of all things. It was infuriating. It was bad enough he was of Targaryen blood thanks to his grandmother, but Robert had hoped the traits would never pass on through his seed. At the very least, his wife's own blood should help keep it from manifesting, but not. It seemed the strength of the dragon could not truly be suppressed. My queen? Asked Pycelle after handing Naruto over to Cersei while knowing that even though Robert was king of the Seven Kingdoms, the queen's father held the most sway, and by extension the queen herself. As for Jon Arryn, he just stood by to watch events play out, knowing only his own sound advice to Robert following tonight could possibly save this child from an extremely short life. Do what your king commands of you, Pycelle. Everyone here is sworn to silence. Until a time comes, my son is officially dead to the world, said Cersei while she reflected on the fact her child with Robert was alive and the prophecy foretold by Maggie the Frog made itself known in her mind. Was this child one of 3 she would bring into the world and die before herself? Or was this something else entirely? Did the gods old and new change their plans and the destiny of the 7 kingdoms in the process? If so, then what did it mean for the child now in her arms? Or for those she would have in the future? Cersei did not dare think about what this new development meant for her as a woman or as queen of the 7 kingdoms. "Yes, my queen," whispered the handmaiden, who was a bit shaken by the cruelty of the queen, and the dark look in those eyes aimed at the very child she brought into the world. "Good. No doubt the masters in Astapor will pay you a hefty sum for the child. You may keep it all as payment for your loyalty and silence on the matter when this is over," said Cersei while she motioned for the woman to depart on the ship with the boy. The handmaiden in question merely nodded and turned around while taking Naruto into her arms before walking toward the boat. Looking back for 1 second, the woman saw Cersei had already walked away from the port, and had no intention of stopping to even consider looking back herself. "A gold dragon for your thoughts, my dear," said the smooth voice of Varys, the master of whispers, from near the ship meant to sail for Essos. "Lord Varys!" exclaimed the handmaiden in shock, but bowed slightly all the same. "I see you are taking the young prince away. Such a shame the child of royalty is sent away all because his father hates his natural features. Even worse, the boy's own mother hates her child due to her husband's whoring. No doubt she blames more on her own son's unique traits, which the queen believes encourages the king to be repeatedly unfaithful. I am starting to suspect madness is not just a trait shared only among the Targaryens these days," commented Varys while he looked at the sleeping child and wondered just how much milk of the poppy did they put in the boy's food and drink to knock him out. From what his little birds told him, the boy was energetic for his age, and yet was highly perceptive of his surroundings. As if he knew who to trust and not to trust in a just few short moments interacting with people. No doubt Cersei or Robert had a servant Naruto had never seen before drug his food before another, who didn't know about the milk of the poppy, giving it to him, and let nature take its course. By the time the child woke up, Naruto would have no idea where he was, and how he got there with the woman holding onto him during the entire ship ride over to Essos. Poor boy. He would have his little birds keep an eye on the boy's progress in Essos and see if the child could be of use to the overall benefit of the realm should Robert's clear, yet early sign of ineffective ruling fail miserably. Yes, and to turn him into an unsullied. I had heard stories about them and how they are turned into slave soldiers for a slave army. It is wrong, whispered the woman with the feeling of sorrow in her heart while Varys nodded. Since he was from Essos and knew the cruelty of the world there was by far worse than Westeros could ever hope to be when compared side by side. And Varys did not wish for any child, much less this one, have something in common with him in regard to lacking the male appendage between the legs. Which is why I propose an alternative to your approach with what the royal family has asked of you, my dear. One where the boy does not become an unsullied, but gains the fighting prowess worthy of a Baratheon, and being called his father's son, offered Varys before he slid gracefully to his left and showed a chest filled to the brim with gold. Lord Varys, this is too much, protested the woman while Varys smiled a gentle smile at her. Not when it comes to investing in the good of the realm, my dear. Take this chest of gold and spend it wisely on young Naruto. Raise the boy as your own son if you must while in Essos, but do not squander his clearly limitless potential. Something tells me the fate of the 7 kingdoms will rest on that poor boy's shoulders. It will be your duty to ensure those shoulders are strong enough to hold said weight when the time comes, said Varys while the woman simply nodded and went onto the ship with 2 men taking the chest with them. When should I return with him? Asked the woman curiously with Varys smiling. When he shows his strength mentally and physically is superior to all those around him, said Varys with the handmaiden nodding. I will, Lord Varys. I will make this boy a strong Baratheon worthy of his father and be the future king of the 7 kingdoms, whispered the handmaiden while she held the boy close. May I know the name of the woman who will be the boy's future mother? Questioned Varys while the woman smiled. It's Kushina of House Uzumaki. My family bloodline can be traced right back to old Valyria itself, said Kushina while Varys was shocked, but pleased by this. Good to know. Teach him everything you know, my dear. Knowledge is power and he will need all the power available to him, said Varys while Kushina nodded and she held the child close. All the while the ship was sailing away from Westeros to Essos and one day, into the very beyond itself. No one would see Prince Naruto for nearly 20 years. Nearly 20 years later, narrow sea. A small raft with a single sail rode the waves of the brutal sea around one figure sitting in the raft, currently acting like nothing was wrong. It didn't matter to this man that there was a storm around him. It didn't matter if there was heavy rain, thunder, lightning, and waves almost as big as the wall in the north within the realm of Westeros. To this one person on this raft, this was irrelevant in his mind, and he did not fear the storm raging around like a wild beast. For in truth, this man was the storm. It was a reflection of his rage, his wrath, his fury. It was a reflection of his soul. It didn't hurt him in the slightest. It never did. How long has it been since I was away? Has it really been close to 20 years? 20 long-ass years of being away from my screwed-up biological family? I wonder what my so-called mother is doing now. If the rumors about her are in fact true, she is either doing one of two things. Fucking my Uncle Jaime or fucking one of her male relatives if Jaime isn't around to do it himself. Now that my asshole for a father is dead and unable to put her to the sword, she'll no doubt spread her legs for just about anyone, thought the man while lightning flashed off in the darkness for a second and rode the wild waves on his tiny raft. The man in question wore dark boots made of the strongest material money could buy, as well as baggy pants, which he designed to be water resistant for just this sort of situation with the rain coming down. His shirt was a mixture of red, black, and orange together in an intricate pattern of swirls that looked like the whirlpools drunk sailors from Bravos would tell in bar taverns. A thin layer of chainmail was underneath the shirt, but this type of chainmail was lightweight, so in the event of falling into the water, he wouldn't sink like a stone. His face was sharp, handsome looking if not for the red cloth hiding his face, and keeping the water out of his mouth. His right eye was blood red with 3 tomos in them, and the other one was a purple color worthy of any Targaryen with a ripple-like pattern in it. His hair was dark spiky blondish color and it was a long mane running down the back of his neck while being protected by a large straw hat. On his back was a sword made of Valyrian steel in the shape of what his adopted mother called a katana from the days of Valyria was still strong. Also, unlike other swords of Valyrian steel, this one was crimson red, and had an light of sorts shining from the blade. Such a weapon had served this man faithfully for years now, cutting down man after man, warrior after warrior, and monster after monster in human flesh he had seen while in Essos. This man had traveled from Essos to Bravos and back again to Essos without fear or worry for his life. This man had fought with sell swords from the Second Sons to the Golden Company itself. This man had been in the fighting pit arenas in the city of Meereen, fought Westeros knights, Braavosi swordsmen, and even a few Dothraki horsemen. The man's name? Naruto of House Baratheon, though if he were honest with himself, the man preferred to be Naruto of House Uzumaki since his surrogate mother was more of a mother to him than Cersei ever was in the few short years being around her. His beloved surrogate mother, who died when he was 12 from an illness, one of many at the time running through Essos. It had been a devastating blow to the boy, as she was the mother he always wanted, and denounced his bitch of mother by blood for the woman who wasn't, yet loved him all the same. Kushina had taught him much during his time with her and had been a dedicated student in math, reading, writing, and how the way of the world truly worked instead of the way fairy tale books told it. The world was cruel, dark, and people could be just as cruel and dark from what Kushina had taught him about major events in Westeros. From the Reigns of Castamere incident involving Tywin Lannister crushing 2 houses who rebelled against him to what Gregor Clegane and Armory Lorch did to Elia Martell and her 2 children during the sacking of King's Landing to name just a few. In fact, in recent years, much of the treachery done throughout Westeros was started by House Lannister with Tywin Lannister being the source of them. Even the sacking of King's Landing was done through Tywin Lannister by marching his army under the ruse of coming to aid the Mad King for when Robert's army began its assault. Only to turn on the Mad King and began the start of the horrible act that helped make the man feared and influential man throughout the 7 kingdoms. Then there was the Greyjoy Rebellion, which had happened a few years after Naruto was sent away and the Kraken King had been forced to bend the knee to King Robert. At the same time, Balon Greyjoy gave up his only remaining son to House Stark after losing the others during the fighting. It was sometime later that Naruto was later found on the dirty streets of Marine by a Cell Sword, who once served the Golden Company in his younger years, and was in need of making a few gold dragons. The man saw the boy fighting off some questionable people, slavers most likely, and even saw the boy successfully kill one of the greedy fools, who the Cell Sword recognized as someone who lost all of his money in the fighting pits just earlier that day. The fools went about seeking to collect some measure of compensation for his losses by targeting someone and chose the young male Baratheon. Not that the sore losers got a chance to enjoy themselves in terms of capturing their prey once Naruto showed off his unorthodox and unpredictable fighting abilities. The Cell Sword approached Naruto once the slavers were on the ground bleeding, broken, and most likely dead in the next few hours. After hearing the boy's story, the man offered to train him how to fight, compete in the fighting pits against all comers from all over the world, and become truly a warrior few could match on the battlefield. How could Naruto say no to that? The answer? He couldn't. But that wasn't all. In the time Naruto had been away from Westeros and King's Landing, the boy had begun to have dreams of another time. Another life with other places. Doing things with his own 2 hands and feet he never thought possible in this world growing up. Naruto did not understand it at first, but over time, his highly intellectual mind began to understand, as the gods entered his mind, and told him of the truth about his previous life. They told him everything. His name they put in Robert's mouth, the eyes being given to him as a gift, which Robert mistook for Targaryen blood clashing with his Baratheon blood, and how destiny would be reshaped throughout the world once more now that he was in it. Flashback some time ago. Where am I? What's going on? Asked Naruto to himself while he was looking around in the darkness and briefly wondered if the stranger itself had come for his life. You are here because I wish it mortal, said the dark raspy voice of a malicious entity hovering over the boy. The stranger, whispered Naruto in shock and a hint of fear while the stranger laughed at him. Yes, I am the stranger, though I go by so many other names. Some older one I miss being called. The Death God, the end of all things alive. But in another lifetime in connection to you, I was called the Shinigami, said the stranger while Naruto stared up at him and had a sense of recondition around the last name. So you are in fact one of the old gods, surmised Naruto with the Shinigami, or rather the stranger was laughing yet again. Yes, one of the old gods. One of the oldest actually. Death really has no age since it is eternal and never-ending. As to why I am here, child, is because I have need of you in this realm just as many did in another lifetime long before today, said the stranger before he waved his hand and images of Naruto revealed themselves to the boy and the deed done in them. Much to the child's shock, awe, and even a hint of joy knowing about a past life where he did many incredible things. It was quite the legacy. Not that I am complaining or anything, but I didn't think the stranger would need a champion. Why choose me? Surely there are others more honorable and worthy for the task? Questioned Naruto with the stranger shaking his head no. There are none. Not yet. There is another who could be my champion, but I have seen into the future many years from now. Events will play out where the one I could choose to be my champion, as well as the champion of the other gods watching over the world, would arrive too late to take up the mantle. Wickedness, cruelty, betrayal, and other dark things will dig in too deep to be removed by the time it's too late to fight the true darkness that is to come. Normally, I would not be allowed to intervene regardless of my status as one of the more powerful deities among my brethren, but given how events played out, the chaos, and the destruction caused by the late arrival of those needed will be too late. As such, the night you were born, I took your soul from the many in the cycle of reincarnation, and placed it in the stillborn child your parents were meant to have instead of the living breathing offspring you yourself became through me, said the stranger while Naruto's eyes widened. You are the reason my eyes are different, exclaimed Naruto, since he knew his 2 eyes were special despite knowing his biological parents thought otherwise. Yes, my gifts to you from another time to help in your future quest and the trials to come. You may have also noticed your uncanny ability to sense others and their overall intentions through their emotions. A family trait from your past life I felt would be put to good use. Not to mention the energy that is chakra your past life used, though in this day and age, many would simply call it magic, said the stranger while more images of Naruto's past life showed themselves and one in particular caught his attention. His surrogate mother Kushina was in one of them. Why is my mother in that one? Has she been brought back to life again like you did with me? asked Naruto with the stranger smiling further. For the most part, yes. Sadly, even I am bound by certain rules. Rules that cannot be broken. While I could bring Kushina back to life from the reincarnation cycle, she is not my champion, or any champion of the gods. As such, your past life's mother will have no memory of you from that time in this one. Not even in dreams. At best, I could only give her the maternal instincts needed to raise you properly. I felt it was owed to her after she was killed the night you were born in your past life. My way of providing compensation for that moment in time. I also chose to bring her back because I knew what your current biological parents would do in terms of shipping you away and that you would need a mother, even a surrogate to help in your future development. After all, who better to be your surrogate mother in this life to raise you, than the one you had in your past life? Said the stranger with Naruto nodding since there was no better a candidate. So what happens now? Asked Naruto curiously. Now you train. Train your mind. Train your body. You must forge yourself into becoming a warrior and leader this world needs in order to survive. Good luck, said the stranger before he vanished from Naruto's mind. House Baratheon's motto is, ours is the fury. I will become that fury. I will become the fury, thought Naruto while clenching his fists. End flashback. And now Naruto was coming home to rule over the 7 kingdoms to fulfill his destiny given to him the gods old and new. Provided this ugly-ass ship in front of him would move out of the way of him and the storm his power created when at sea. The silence. Euron Greyjoy loved the storms the sea brought. In his mind, he was the storm. The first, the last, and everything in between that was within his reach. The man had sailed through all the seas the world had to offer, seeing new places, burning them down if it suited his ever-twisted mood. The exiled Greyjoy had gone about his traveling the world as a man born on the Iron Islands by pillaging, raped, murdered, and taken just about whatever life had to offer. Did the man care about the consequences? No, he had the drowned god on his side. He was the herald of change. The storm that would blow through all the ships, the men, and anything else that was caught up in it. No one could stand in his way. No one, not even this tiny insignificant raft heading in his path. What fool goes into a storm, my storm in just a raft? Does this moron wish to join the drowned god? No matter, I am feeling generous today. I'll destroy his raft and let the fool sink to the bottom of the sea. Besides, I doubt whoever is on the tiny thing has any items of value, thought Euron Greyjoy while watching the man in the raft look up at him with an impassive look on his face. Before the man on the raft drew a sword from his back and lightning struck the blade to make it glow brightly in the darkness of the storm. It was like watching fire and lightning mix together, spawning an unholy creation in the form of a sword in the hands of someone unworthy of such power. Euron didn't even remember barking out orders to his men, who he had enslaved years ago, to obey him. It wasn't hard to break their wills to serve his own, as each of them had their tongues cut out one by one with each crew member watching it happen. Euron made them all mute so he did not have to hear their protests to his orders when they were given, and silenced any form of mutiny they might create. But now Euron almost wished he could hear their voices while they screamed and tried to convince him that they should flee. Almost. Ours is the fury. Those were the words echoed through the storm. Euron knew them to be the house motto of the Baratheons. Spoken softly and yet heard as clear as a sunny day despite the storm surrounding the two opposites staring at each other through it. Almost as if the motto was bound to the storm that Euron Greyjoy himself thought was his own and herald his return one day to the Iron Islands to claim the Salt Throne his weak older brother currently sat on. But now Euron thought differently from where he stood on his ship. For another to possess such power of the storm, to command the lightning, the fire, and the winds in a way that it usurped Euron's own connection was something else entirely. And it was proven when the figure on the raft made a horizontal slash with his crimson sword, which sent a literal wave of power, colored crimson like the sword's blade, toward his ship. His ship. It cut through the water, the winds, the storm itself, and headed right for the silence with a fury not unlike House Baratheon embraced with a passion. Acting on instinct, Euron dived for the floor, burying himself deep into the wood of his ship as humanly possible. Part of his mind screaming at him to flee. To escape from this new force of power that outmatched his own connection to the seas and the storms they brought with them. But Euron had blocked it out. It served no purpose to think, much less act like a frightened child, or one of those high-born women in their castles for that matter. He was a Ironborn, true Ironborn. And the Ironborn did not flee. They made others flee. They made others tremble. They made others fall in submission and pay the iron price. Sadly, his beliefs on this matter meant very little due to the man's ship being hit by the wave of energy. Said energy had not only cut through the entirety of his ship, killing much of his enslaved crew in the process in a most violent fashion, but somehow the act managed to set his ship on fire, and burning everything around him into ash. Himself included. How could this happen? I am the storm, the first and the last. How can I die when I am the drowned god's herald? Thought Euron while his body burned and slowly turned to ash with the rest of the ship and crew. And with that final thought running through his cruel Ironborn mind, Euron Greyjoy of House Greyjoy knew no more. His body not turned to ash became part of the sea and was given to the drowned god along with the rest of his ship and crew. With Naruto smirked at the sight of his handiwork. The destroyed and burning ship in front of him sinking into the deep blue ocean floor was something that needed to be destroyed. His sensory skills, honed after years of training mentally and physically, had allowed him to sense the ship was filled with suffering. Filled with sorrow. Filled with pain. And one figure among all of them filled with hate. The leader, no doubt. The source of the crew's suffering, sorrow, and pain since being a part of the ship. Originally, Naruto thought about taking the ship for his own. Kill the captain. Liberate the crew. Sail to the nearest port and let them do whatever they wanted in life. But as he dived deeper and sensed the emotions of the crew, Naruto saw the crew was broken by their sadistic captain beyond repair. Sure, he could kill the captain, claim the ship and its crew for his own. Treat them a hell of a lot better than the one leading them now. But that wouldn't change anything. They were too broken in mind and body to think their new master would be an improvement over the old one. They would still suffer, still live in anguish. The brutality the crew had endured by this hated-filled individual was too much for them. Death was the only recourse and merciful act Naruto could perform at this point. And as such, the young Baratheon did just that with a single swing of his sword. It was almost a shame no one was around to see him do that. Well, no one alive outside of himself to see him do that. Next stop? King's Landing and the Iron Throne that his sadistic moron for a half-brother bastard by the name of Joffrey was currently sitting on. It was high time to correct the mistakes made in being made at the heart of the Seven Kingdoms. Naruto arrived in Blackwater Bay without incident. Oh, he got a lot of looks from the old man, who was the harbor master when arriving at King's Landing. No doubt due to his own unique transportation being a raft when arriving and stepping out before watching it sink. Your name? Asked the harbor master while Naruto glanced at him for a second before dropping off a few gold dragons in the man's hands. My name is Don't of House Exist, remarked Naruto with the harbor master looking at the gold dragons for a second and nodded. Right, thank you, don't exist. Carry on, replied the harbor master while Naruto simply smirked and walked toward his intended destination. The Red Keep, the Iron Throne, to his birthright. But first, he had a few days to burn, and decided walk through the city was required for those few days to get a feel of the city itself along with the people living within its walls. Easier said than done given how the stench and the overall decay the city was currently in right now. The stench of horse shit and human shit mixing together to create some really horrible smells that burned his nose. Smells that should never have come into existence, but did thanks to the lack of maintenance the city needed to keep it clean, and the people living in it, healthy. Naruto was surprised a plague had yet to manifest here. Of course, perhaps the place was already filled with so many horrible things. Even diseases had standards, and chose not to fester here. To think my father let it get this bad. Joffrey probably is making it even worse from the people openly being vocal against my half-brother, thought Naruto while he was walking through the streets and seeing all sorts of problems in Fleabottom. Piles of shit and piss on the ground. People lying in alleys starving. Dying or begging for food. Their bodies had been ravaged by disease, starvation, dehydration, or all of the above. Not only that, but some desperate women were openly whoring themselves out in public to make just enough money to get by on today alone. No doubt to feed their families and children, if they had any. It sickened Naruto to no end. Instead of making King's Landing being a great city unlike any other, his father and half-brother had made the place into a damn cesspool. To make matters worse, the people were up in arms about Joffrey apparently ordering the death of multiple people, including babies no less. The City Watch personally carrying out the orders with the Lord Commander Janos Slint having led them and doing it himself. And while the masses tried to figure out who did it, the young Baratheon was whistling a jaunty tune with a skip in his step. The House of Black and White would be proud of him if they knew he had killed the asshole in broad daylight without anyone even noticing it happen. Naruto of course knew why Joffrey ordered the deaths of so many people, since they were all Robert's bastard children. Each of them had a claim to the Iron Throne through the man's whoring bringing about their conception. Apparently, the eldest of the rumored 20 bastards, named Gendry Waters, was missing, and a hunt for him had begun throughout the Seven Kingdoms when it was discovered his blacksmith for a master had sold him to the Night's Watch. The young bastard of King Robert was only a few years younger than Naruto himself, but if legitimized by royal decree, Gendry had a claim to the Iron Throne after Naruto himself, since Joffrey was younger than both of them. That and Joffrey wasn't even Robert's by blood. Anyone who understood biology in terms of family traits could tell you that if they saw both parents along with the child standing side by side. But the fact remained that Joffrey had begun murdering Robert's bastard children and by blood connection, Naruto's half-siblings. Nearly 20 half-siblings snuffed out simply due to Joffrey secretly fearing competition by those who would easily be better kings or just rulers in general over himself. No doubt their shared mother had something to do with the fear-induced desire to kill all of Robert's illegitimate offspring, and the idea was planted mostly out of spite for her pig of a husband long after his death. Upon entering the Red Keep, Naruto silently made his way to the throne room. No one stopped him, but the man knew the Kingsguard and Lannister soldiers stationed here at Cersei's request, command, were watching him. Not that it mattered. Naruto could best each and every one of them if needed and not break a sweat in the process. Making his way to the throne room, Naruto clearly heard shouting, screaming, a young girl pleading for her life, and of course Joffrey, being the sadistic asshole word of mouth, told the Baratheon he would be before meeting him. As he silently entered the room, the young Baratheon saw a girl with red hair on the ground, trembling, and pleading with Joffrey to be merciful. How she did nothing to deserve his wrath, even if her traitorous brother was leading a traitorous army from the north down south, and clashing with Lannister forces from the west being led by Tywin Lannister. Moving through the shadows of the crowd, Naruto moved closer to the Iron Throne with calculated precision. Each step forward was a step with a purpose. A silent purpose, but a purpose all the same. This purpose? Move into position to stop his idiot half-brother from hurting the girl further with the crossbow sitting comfortably on his lap like a loving pet. Of course Joffrey would see the crossbow as a pet and treat it as such. It could be used to hurt others and torture them slowly with pain if one knew where to aim the arrow. Naruto would even wager the brat secretly had an erection hidden somewhere behind his pants and was hiding it behind the crossbow easily enough because his was so small. I mean, by the gods, the brat was so skinny, so frail, so thin. How can anyone take this brat seriously as a king, or want to serve him, regardless of the oath made when a king is crowned? Even the most loyal of Kingsguard must have had some desire to run their swords through Joffrey's back or front. Hell, his uncle Jaime did it to the previous king, and still the man got to keep his position when many demanded he be sent to the wall. Grandfather Tywin Lannister exerting his influence had something to do with it, no doubt. What is the meaning of this? Demanded one Tyrion Lannister, walking in with his trusty cell sword Bronn by his side along with several members of the City Watch. Interesting. Uncle Tyrion in the flesh. And he was made hand of the king no less. No doubt until grandfather comes here to take over the responsibilities once the war is over or close to it, thought Naruto while moving closer to see how this played out. Someone get the girl something cover herself with, commanded Tyrion, and Sandor Clegane quickly moved to obey. Again, an interesting development. An actual Lannister who does not have darkness in his heart, or the level of cruelty others possess. No wonder grandfather despises him. Tyrion could be full grown, yet Tywin would still despise him for being more of a Lannister like himself, thought Naruto while his mind stored that in his head for later. What is wrong with you? What kind of boy threatens and hurts an innocent girl? Asked Tyrion while Sansa was slowly able to stand with the hound standing and holding her. I am punishing her, replied Joffrey like it was the natural order of things. For what? She not fighting in a war, you half-wit. Countered Tyrion angrily, knowing the more beaten up Sansa Stark was, the greater the threat Robb Stark, and the North would become during the war. You can't talk to me like that. The king does as he likes, exclaimed Joffrey with his own anger surfacing at being talked down to by his uncle. You are no king, nor are you a prince. Just a boy who thinks himself one, countered Tyrion while Joffrey looked ready to give the order to have his uncle killed. Naruto couldn't allow that. I agree. He is not a king. Nor a prince, said Naruto while walking through the crowd and gaining the attention of everyone in the room. And who the fuck are you? Demanded Joffrey while Naruto chuckled and ignored the sound of swords being unsheathed by some of the men in the room. Why Joffrey, I'm hurt. How could you forget about me? Of course you were just a baby at the time and we never actually saw each other. And in truth, I'm not surprised mother never told you about me given the ever painful history she feels her life endured through my birth. But in case you haven't pieced it together, we are brothers, said Naruto while he walked toward Joffrey, ignoring the defensive actions of the Hound, Bronn, the City Watch, and the Kingsguard all reaching for their weapons. What are you talking about you stupid little man? I have no other siblings outside of Myrcella and Tommen, replied Joffrey while Naruto chuckled again as he got closer. That is not entirely accurate. You see, before you were born, there was one child brought into the world during a night when a fierce storm blew all around King's Landing. It was a massive storm. Biggest and largest in the history of all the Seven Kingdoms. It was as if the old gods and the new were bringing something into the world in a dramatic fashion that only they could produce. During that time while the storm raged, my father Robert of House Baratheon, King of the Seven Kingdoms, was with our mother, as she screamed out in pain, and gave birth to a child with dark blonde hair with blue eyes. In the room at the time of this child's birth were a group of handmaidens, the hand of the King Jon Arryn, and Grand Maester Pycelle, replied Naruto before walking past a still cautious, yet curious Tyrion, and was ignoring the armed men watching his every move with even more caution. What do I care about this story? It doesn't concern me, remarked Joffrey while Naruto let out an even louder chuckle. Oh, but it does. You see, this child was thrown away by his parents for numerous, and ultimately stupid reasons. They didn't disown him officially, but the king declared his son to be stillborn so no one would know about the child showing off some Targaryen features from his father's grandmother's side of the family. To that end, he sent his son away to Essos, never intending to see his child again, and went about his future years drinking, hunting, and whoring with countless women. Now, as to how this story pertains to you my dear brother, it's quite simple. I am that child he discarded so long ago. I am the son of King Robert of House Baratheon. Not only that, dear Joffrey, but between us, I am also the oldest, and by right of succession if not by blood. The Iron Throne is mine to claim. Declared Naruto with many in the room gasping in shock, awe, and even horror at his declaration. Lies. I am the eldest son and king of the Seven Kingdoms. You have no proof to your claim as king, exclaimed Joffrey in a whining tone when he protested his words. No proof? Someone summon our mother. Tell her. The prodigal son she threw away has returned, said Naruto while staring right into Joffrey's eyes. You heard him. Get the queen at once, commanded Tyrion to several members of the City Watch when he saw no one move to obey the young supposed Baratheon. You are an idiot. My mother will never acknowledge you as her son, much less be my older brother, said Joffrey in a smug tone while Naruto leaned down so he was more eye level with the blonde-haired boy. There are other sources outside of my mother who can confirm my story, including the spider himself. Even if Pycelle tries to side with you on this, I know the spider will not. The man cannot lie. It goes against his position as the master of whispers, for he would never be trusted again if that were the case. And in the event both do lie in my presence about this, I will have their heads, and I will see to it they suffer greatly for it, whispered Naruto in a cold tone that promised pain to any who lied to his face. What is the meaning of this? Who are you? How dare you stand in the presence of my son? Exclaimed Cersei running into the room with her cousin and only recently made knight Lancel Lannister trying to keep up with her. Another frail-looking Lannister. A submissive type tendency from what Naruto could sense from the blonde-haired man, and another interesting fact was that it happened to be connected to Cersei. Whatever hold the woman had on Lancel, it was clearly powerful enough to make the man do whatever she wanted to do, and Naruto suspected it might be of a UAL nature. At least that was what his sense of smell told him, given the scent of the two were covered in the same type of soap only a woman would use for a bath. Lancel wouldn't be near Cersei when she was taking a bath unless he was in the bath with her and they were not getting clean. Even the high-end armor the young man was wearing didn't hide the simple fact Lancel was another skinny young brat himself. Clearly thinking that fancy armor made the man over the man making the armor. Honestly, what was it with his mother's side of House Lannister producing such frail-looking men as of late? Thank the gods his father's blood was so damn strong that it overpowered such frailty. I know it has nearly been 20 years since you last saw me Queen Regent, but even still. A mother should know her own child by the sight of him, whispered Naruto before turning around and removed the cloth and straw hat around his face when he did. Naruto, whispered Cersei with wide eyes, yet her voice carried through the room like an echo. In the flesh after almost 20 long years away on the other side of the world by your own hands no less, replied Naruto with a small bow. No, it cannot be you. You were sent away to Essos to die or at least to become one of the Unsullied. That was my command to the stupid handmaiden who took you there. Exclaimed Cersei while she had a look of denial on her face. Only a Baratheon would say that about the women they were with, thought Bronn and Tyrion at the same time. As for why I am here, well, I think it would be obvious. I am here to claim what is mine by right and by blood. And what is mine by right and by blood just happens to be this ugly chair my little brother is sitting on while he pretends to be king. And a poor king at that, said Naruto while Joffrey glared and soon Cersei did the same. You have no claim to the Iron Throne. You were declared stillborn and as such you are no longer the legitimate heir, countered Cersei while Joffrey smirked. That would only be the case if the declaration were true. Seeing as I am alive and still standing here in front of you, it's not. Therefore the declaration is invalid, replied Naruto while Cersei scowled knowing he was right. I have not seen my son in nearly 20 years. There is no way to tell you or him. For all I know, you are a fraud pretending to be my son, said Cersei while knowing there was no way to prove this man was her son from that one night all those years ago. Isn't there? Grand Maester Pycelle, how good of you to come. I imagine word reaching you of my return put an extra kick in your step. And you brought friends. How nice, said Naruto while seeing a nervous Grand Maester Pycelle quickly walk into the room with a calm Varys and an extremely curious Petter Baelish. Grand Maester Pycelle, is there any way to confirm this man was the son I gave Robert nearly 20 years ago? Asked Cersei while the Grand Maester glanced from Naruto to her while seeing the denounce his claims or else. Look, she was shooting him. None, my queen. Robert's child died in birth. His anger that night was matched only by the storm which surrounded the castle walls on the night in question, said Pycelle with Joffrey and Cersei smirking at him. See, the man lies. Kill him, commanded Joffrey while some more men moved to draw their swords. But were stopped when a heavy, invisible pressure suddenly filled the room and made a lot of people sweat nervously. The first man to point their sword, spear, or any other weapon on hand at me will die a painful death that will be told in stories and songs for generations to come. So if any of you wish to see tomorrow to fuck your woman or a whore in a brothel, I strongly suggest that you decide against reaching for a weapon, commanded Naruto while he glared at the Hound first before members of the City Watch, Lannister men, and Kingsguard met his unusual eyes. Those eyes, just like remember them all those years ago. The reason for Robert's desire to fuck his whores when the reason behind it wasn't surrounding Lyanna Stark, thought Cersei bitterly. Now, as to the fact you say there is no proof, Grand Maester, I wish to ask a few short, yet simple questions pertaining to my legitimacy. Do you object? Said Naruto while now focusing on the elderly man. No my lord, replied Pycelle with his eyes unable to look away from the warrior in front of him. He also missed the hitched noise Bronn made when seeing the various sigils on Naruto's left arm plate, though the others, namely Tyrion, did not. The two shared a glance at each other with Tyrion's eyes demanding answers to Bronn's response to seeing the sigils. Tell me something, Grand Maester. If the king declares something about a child he sees, say, being a stillborn baby, yet the child itself isn't stillborn, is the declaration made by him valid? Asked Naruto calmly while Pycelle stuttered for a moment. No my lord, such declarations are not valid. In fact, to enforce false declarations goes against the seven as decreed by the High Septon. No liege lord, high lord, or even peasant would obey such a declaration if it was made by the king, said Pycelle while Naruto nodded. I see. Also, when the child nearly 20 years ago was born, You were in the room when the queen gave birth that night, correct? Asked Naruto with Pycelle nodding, since it was in fact true, since it was required for a maester, much less the Grand Maester, to attend to the royal family when the queen was in the process of giving birth. Yes, my lord, answered Pycelle simply. And prior to the King Robert's false declaration of the child being stillborn, the child in question was in fact alive. Isn't that correct? Asked Naruto with Pycelle sweating harder when the pressure increased when he refused to reply immediately. Yes, my lord. King Robert was quite happy the child was born. Called him a maelstrom due to his birth being around a storm and the child screaming out during it. He called the child his son, replied Pycelle with Cersei glaring at him. But at the moment the old man feared young man in front of him over Tywin Lannister's daughter. But something happened that changed, didn't it? When the eyes of the boy had suddenly shifted from Baratheon blue eyes. All Baratheons are known to possess for two differently colored eyes. One was a demonic red. The other one, a purple shade worthy of anyone from House Targaryen. Correct? Asked Naruto with Pycelle nodding once again. It was most unusual to see after it happened. No one knew why. I concluded that the reason it happened was due to King Robert's grandmother was Targaryen and some of her traits, namely the eyes, were showing themselves. One was successful, the other was not, and as a result King Robert went into a rage about it. He officially declared the child stillborn, but the boy himself lived in King's Landing for roughly 4 years prior to his departure, said Pycelle with Naruto nodding. And these optical features surrounding the child, can they be duplicated outside of the boy's own bloodline? Asked Naruto with Pycelle shaking his head no. No, they cannot. Short of the boy becoming a man and having a child with those same optical traits, it is not possible. Only the boy has such unique traits. No one else in all the history of the Seven Kingdoms has two different types of eyes in that fashion or color, said Pycelle with Naruto's smile increasing. So short of me having a child, the chances of someone impersonating Robert's long-lost and presumed dead son are practically non-existent. All due to the unique nature of the boy's eyes being one of a kind. Concluded Naruto with Pycelle nodding and ignoring the death glare from Cersei. That is correct, my lord, replied Pycelle humbly. Tell me, Grand Maester, are my eyes identical to the ones you saw all those years ago? Asked Naruto with Pycelle looking at the eyes in question with fear and felt the intense presence behind those unusual soul-piercing orbs before falling to his knees in despair at the truth looking him right in the face. Forgive me, your grace. I didn't want to lie to you. I am a frail old man who fears for his life at the hands of the Lannisters and their power, pleaded Pycelle with Naruto snarled at him before focusing on the spider watching everything. If anyone else is not convinced, perhaps the spider would care to reveal what he knows about myself. I highly doubt my existence went unnoticed by your little birds. Though I am sure they had to earn their reward for such good pieces of information on me, said Naruto with Varys bowing slightly. Indeed, the man here is in fact Robert's child. A Baratheon both in name and blood. I was on the docks the day the boy was sent away to Essos with the handmaiden charged with sending him to Astapor to become an Unsullied. All at the command to the queen herself. King Robert didn't know she wanted that to happen, but even if he did know, I am unsure what his reaction to it would be given what the masters of Astapor do to boys in order to turn them into Unsullied, said Varys while Tyrion and Bronn flinched since they knew and were glad that never happened to them. It's a good thing my father never thought about it. Then again, my own deformity might have had a hand in it. I doubt the masters of Astapor could turn a dwarf into an Unsullied despite my father, who would no doubt pay them to try if he had the chance, thought Tyrion to himself. There were times he thanked the gods for making him a dwarf. Not always, but there were times his size did benefit the various situations he found himself in. My little birds have kept an eye on him for a while, and yes, you did make them earn their right to be my birds when you were in Essos. I must say your actions while they were most impressive from what I have heard you starting out in the fighting pits of Meereen around the age of 12 years old following the death of your handmaiden for a surrogate mother. I offer my condolences to you by the way. She was a good woman to have loved and raised you as she did, said Varys since he had feared the plan of getting the boy to return once a man had been ruined, which was why he refocused his attention on Viserys and Daenerys Targaryen in taking the Iron Throne. Thank you, Lord Varys. Please continue, said Naruto with Varys bowing again. You eventually made your handler so much money, he had no need to have you fighting there, and even gave you a generous sum of the profits earned to travel all throughout Essos. You eventually joined the Second Sons for a while, turned down several promotions to be a lieutenant or a captain. Before long you were recruited by the Golden Company, and again turned down several promotions since it involved being behind in battle over the idea of fighting at the front. After a time with them, you parted ways, traveled the rest of the world, spent time in Bravos, and learned many things there too. Including how to speak in several languages fluently to the point where no one would think you were not from said places, said Varys with Naruto nodding since it was all true. It doesn't matter now. I am the king. I was coronated and have the blessing of the High Septon himself. Exclaimed Joffrey while Naruto turned to face his half-brother and made the boy sweat more under his gaze before walking toward the skinny little brat. All of which means nothing. You are no longer king. I am the eldest between the two of us, Joffrey. By right of royal blood and the rules of succession in that regard, I am the true king of the Seven Kingdoms, and I will not allow someone like you to sit on my throne. Get out of my seat. Now, commanded Naruto while Joffrey glared up at him despite the whimper coming out of his mouth. No, you can't make me, said Joffrey like a child having to give up his favorite toy to someone else, and watched Naruto lean closer so he was inches from his face. Now, you see, that is where you are wrong, dear brother. I can make you. I will make you. And if you don't get out of my seat in the next 5 seconds, I will beat you within an inch of your pathetic life before throwing you out of the Red Keep onto the shit-filled streets where people are waiting to finish the job I started. So by all means, resist. I will take great joy in beating you into an unrecognizable lump of flesh before I let the people calling for your blood for what you did to my bastard siblings have their way in finishing you off, whispered Naruto while Joffrey glanced at his mother, who paled at the thought of her son being beaten to death by the lowborn outside the Red Keep, and mouthed, "Do as he says. For now," to him. Slowly, Joffrey put down the crossbow that was once in his shaking hands, and put it on the floor to the side of the Iron Throne. Slowly, the boy got out of the Iron Throne, and he stepped aside for his older brother to calmly sit down as the official king of the Seven Kingdoms. After Naruto ripped the crown off the boy's head of course and put it on his own while making a mental note to have his own crown made since this was too small. All hail King Naruto of House Baratheon. Long may he reign, someone had said in the back of the crowd watching this drama play out. Someone Naruto had paid discreetly 10 gold dragons to say just what he paid him to say for this moment. The person had been surprised by this, but for 10 gold dragons, one did not ask questions, and only obeyed when paid. Thank you. Now, first order of business as king, Sandor Clegane, please escort my dear brother to his room, and ensure he does not leave it for any reason until I say he can leave it, said Naruto with Sandor nodding and moved to escort an angry Joffrey back to his room. This can't be happening. My plans, my schemes, my every move to control the throne as Queen Regent is being thwarted, thought Cersei with her mind going into a small panic. Lancel Lannister, please escort my shocked mother to her room. I imagine the sight of me and my return has overstimulated her mind and she needs rest. See to it that she does rest until at a later time of my choosing my mother will be allowed to leave it. Also, tell her she is expect to see me eventually for personal matters which we need to discuss in regards to the future. Important private things that cannot be ignored any longer, ordered Naruto with Lancel nodding hesitantly at him before making sure a shocked Cersei was followed him. And what is to become of me, your grace? Or should I call you my nephew since I am your mother's brother? Asked Tyrion with Naruto glancing at him with a small smile. You can stay, uncle. As for your position, I am making your station as Hand of the King permanent instead of temporary. And you can address me how you like despite my title as king. In fact, order everyone on the small council to gather for an important meeting in the small council room in a few days while news of my return and position reaches the people throughout King's Landing. We have many important things that need to be addressed. Important things that cannot be delayed. Not while I am king, commanded Naruto with Tyrion nodding and moved to carry out the order. Small council chambers. A few days later, Naruto was already sitting down when members of the small council came into the room with looks of interest, curiosity, nervousness, and uncertainty clearly seen on their faces. It was no surprise to him that they looked, if not felt this way, since he was a wild card, a new piece added to the game board, and no one here had a way to deal with such an event like this. King Robert had been easy to run circles around due only showing up for 4 meetings in his 20 years as king. Jon Arryn had to spend his days cleaning up Robert's messes as best he could in his old age with little success. The same for Ned Stark, despite being a younger man compared to Jon when he became Hand of the King and lost his head for it. All thanks to Joffrey being a sadistic piece of shit for a king and even broke his word because he felt a king didn't need to keep his word simply because he was a king. Annoying little shit. Speaking of Joffrey, the little whiny brat cared more about hurting his own subjects over doing any form of ruling as king in the first place. The fool left important matter be dealt with by the small council and his whiny brother fucking mother, which Naruto had the shame of saying was his mother by blood. Fortunately, Tyrion had played the game well as the king's hand, even if it was only a temporary position until Tywin Lannister was able to arrive in King's Landing. The dwarf for a Lannister always kept things close to the chest and making sure no one saw his cards. Even the Master of Whispers saw potential for Tyrion in this Game of Thrones to be a key player if allowed to keep his position of power, and no one tried to kill him off. Though whether Naruto allowed this to happen was ultimately up to him now as King of the Seven Kingdoms. The announcement of Naruto being the new, yet again, king after it was revealed he was Robert Baratheon's oldest son and thus his rightful heir as king was still fresh in everyone's mind. No doubt word had reached Renly and Stannis despite the fact he had planned for Varys to send them messages via ravens to explain just how this came about. He hoped the two brothers would stop their power play to take the Iron Throne, return to King's Landing to reclaim their former titles on the small council. Though something told Naruto such hope was pointless given how stubborn his uncles were when they wanted something. Now that the issues surrounding my brother and mother are temporarily resolved for the moment, we need to discuss important issues surrounding the Seven Kingdoms. Starting of course with the war my moron for a sibling started with the North and House Stark. A war that has ultimately spiraled out of control with my two uncles on father's side of the family amassing their own armies to take the Iron Throne for themselves in the belief my father had no true legitimate male heir to claim it, said Naruto while he looked at the Master of Whispers to indicate he start. My little birds tell me Robb Stark has won a recent campaign against Tywin Lannister, capturing your Uncle Jaime in the process. However, the young Stark's advancement has slowed considerably given his supplies are thinning. Not surprising given the size of his army and most impressive. Add that Theon Greyjoy is sailing to the Iron Islands to get the Kraken King to aid the wolf in his fight might also have something to do with it, said Varys while Naruto nodding. I see. Lord Stark has the right idea since he would need ships, but he might have chosen the wrong house to seek an alliance to crush the Lannisters with given what I know of the Ironborn. No doubt Balon Greyjoy will see this as a means to attack the north if the Wolf's Den is mostly empty of those who could defend it. What about my uncles, Stannis and Renly? Asked Naruto while focusing on the other threats to King's Landing. Lord Stannis has marched with his army to fight his brother Renly, who has married one Marjorie Tyrell of the Reach, and now has a little over 100,000 men under his command. His army easily outmatches Stannis's own. Though I should mention Lord Stannis also has a red woman from Essos on his side to make up of the lack of numbers. From what I was able to learn, she has converted him to the Lord of Light religion Essos practices. Already she has had the statues of the Seven burned and gained quite a few followers around the island of Dragonstone, said Varys with Naruto's eyes narrowing since he was familiar with the religion. Lord of Light. Bah, ghastly religion. Stannis has drifted away from the beliefs of his father's father, and all of his Baratheon ancestors. Such a religion has no place here in the Seven Kingdoms, commented Pycelle offhandedly while Naruto closed his side. Renly is doomed. Stannis will win without losing a single soldier, commented Naruto sadly. How? Asked Tyrion since he was certain Renly would have the edge since the numbers he had far exceeded any other army fighting. Stannis doesn't need numbers in the form of military might right now. The Red Woman from Essos is all he needs. Her magical powers are not something to be underestimated, if used properly in the way she will no doubt suggest to him. I've been to Essos and spent a large portion of my life up until recently in that land. The sorcery behind their religion is not something to scoff at Tyrion. I'm sure even the Master of Whispers here will only reinforce that fact since he was once from Essos too, said Naruto with Tyrion looking at Varys, who nodded grimily since the man had seen, heard, and felt the presence of such dark magic when he was a young boy when a sorcerer had maimed him between his legs. It's true. I did indeed experience such things as a boy. Not something I wish to share with you since it is of a personal nature, but rest assured, the magic behind the Lord of Light is not to be underestimated, as His Grace just mentioned. If Stannis does use her and the dark magic as a means to defeat Renly, I fear it will be an act no one could trace back to Stannis, and thus no one can accuse him of kinslaying, said Varys while Naruto nodded in agreement. If I know my uncle Stannis as well as I think I do, given his own military nature from the stories I have heard in passing about him, the man will no doubt target the one person he knows, who can keep the massive army together. My uncle will target the weak point in all of this, which is Renly himself. Without Renly, the Tyrells will back out of this war while trying to figure out what to do next. Uncle Stannis will take all the bannermen, who once pledged themselves to Renly, and march on King's Landing to secure his right as the next king. All he has to do is kill his own brother using the Red Woman from the safe distance of his own encampment to ensure complete deniability, said Naruto grimly with the others on the small council looking either unsure or worried. And what makes you think he will do such a deplorable act, Your Grace? Asked Pycelle while seeing Naruto's eyes narrowing. Because it is the only option Stannis has open to him. Without her, my uncle cannot win against Renly. She is the instrument from which he will achieve victory over Uncle Renly in this coming fight between brothers, answered Naruto while he looked at everyone in the room with a grave tone in his voice. And should he succeed, not only will Stannis become a kinslayer, if only in secret, but have the numbers needed to attack King's Landing. Both with an army of men and a fleet of ships, added Tyrion with a grim look on his face. Perhaps we can warn Renly of the threat this woman faces. Send an envoy or raven to him. Renly was always the more level-headed of his brothers. And with King Naruto now sitting on the Iron Throne, he might lend his army to defend King's Landing from outside threats, offered Pycelle while he saw Lord Baelish smirking. I can depart right away. I believe Catelyn Stark is also on her way to meet Renly to form an alliance with him and her son against the Lannisters. Since I have a respectable history with both of them, I'm sure I can convince each side to fight for our cause so long as it's against Tywin Lannister's army. No offense to the temporary hand of the king, offered Petyr Baelish with a smile on his face. None taken, commented Tyrion since he didn't like his father either at times. No, replied Naruto coldly. No? Asked Petyr with his smile leaving him. You will not be leaving King's Landing for the foreseeable future, Lord Baelish. I forbid it, commanded Naruto coldly suddenly while he leaned back in his chair and his right hand was tapping on the wood of the table. Not to challenge your decision, Your Grace, but, why not? Asked Petyr while thinking of ways to convince the new king to let him head to Renly's camp to intercept Catelyn and use these events to his advantage. He had been planning to in the next few days and slip out of King's Landing to convince his beloved Catelyn to let Jaime Lannister go in exchange for dear Sansa and Arya Stark returning to the north unharmed. Granted, Arya wasn't here, but Catelyn wouldn't know that, and Petyr was certain he could fool his beloved into believing he didn't know she was not in King's Landing when arranging such a move. Of course, the plan to get her to do it involved retrieving Ned Stark's corpse, and the sword eyes from their current places in the city to bring to her. Once he did, Petyr was certain Catelyn would listen to him, and do what he asked in the name of honor. Granted, it would upset many of the lords from the north, and damage the impressive momentum Robb Stark had acquired since leading his men into battle against Tywin Lannister. The Kingslayer in Robb's possession made for a very valuable bargaining chip, and the young Stark knew this. Everyone knew this, even if you had no experience in war from the start. And to have the young wolf's own mother betray in secret to giving up the Kingslayer would deliver a devastating blow to the wolf's morale. But it was an expected reaction to such a move, and it was what Petyr wanted to happen. If successful in his plan, Petyr knew the war between House Stark and House Lannister would continue on, with the North going more on the defensive while the Lannister forces would go more on the offensive once word reached them of Jaime being freed. The more prolonged the war became with the Lannisters, the more moves he could make, and weaken all sides being played by his machinations. Now if he could only convince the new king to let him leave King's Landing. Perhaps with a whore or two would suffice? It worked for Robert, like father like son. Why should I trust you to do anything, Lord Baelish? Why should I trust the man who betrayed Lord Stark, and the late hand of the king? Asked Naruto with an angry tone in his voice. Lord Stark was a fool. An honorable fool, but a fool nonetheless. I never side with fools, Your Grace. Surely a man of your expertise when it comes to thinking strategically would understand siding with fools is not wise, offered Petter while Naruto kept a stone-cold visage on his face. Ned Stark was hardly a fool. He believed in justice. He believed in honor. He believed you would side with him. The only thing he did that was foolish was tip his hand too soon to my mother and trusting you to back him in becoming regent and protector of the realm. Ned Stark had the men, the numbers, and the right to sit on the Iron Throne as decreed by my late father prior to his death. Had you backed him with the City Watch, the transition would have been peaceful, without bloodshed, and there would be no war with various houses trying to destroy each other. As it stands, I should run my sword through you, and mount your head on a pike before setting it on fire. Just make a point," said Naruto angrily while glaring at Petter Baelish, who looked a tad nervous since this was not going the way he wanted. "In my defense, your grace, said Baelish, but was stopped when Naruto raised his hand and shot him a glare. "There is no defense for what you did, Lord Baelish. Not only did you betray Ned Stark, you betrayed the final command of my father. In addition to this, I am appalled that you have caused the crown to become 6 million in debt under your watch as Master of Coin. Now while I may not have been around during the time of the Mad King, I was under the impression the finances of the crown were very much in the black, correct?" said Naruto with Baelish looking more uncomfortable since he was clearly not used to having his own actions being probed so deeply by someone higher in authority over himself. "Your father had a poor habit with spending the crown's money, your grace. I did what I could to keep the crown out of deeper forms of debt during my time as Master of Coin, but when your father gave me a command, I had no choice but to obey him," defended Petter with Naruto's glare increasing. "If that were even remotely true, Lord Baelish, you would have obeyed my father's final command to support Ned Stark in being regent. As of right now, I hereby strip you of your title as Master of Coin. All of your assets are to be seized, including your brothels, and the money made from them will be used to lessen the debt the crown possesses. A debt you made and thus will be owed with your money fitting the bill," said Naruto with Petter not liking this piece of news at all. "Your grace, no one can manage the crown's finances like I can. What will become of the brothels themselves? The girls working at each establishment need such a profession because they can do nothing else. Surely you won't close them down?" questioned Petter with Naruto scoffing. "Of course not, but as of this moment you will no longer have access to them, or make money through them. I will call forth the most advanced mathematical minds throughout the 7 kingdoms to take a look at your records and ledgers for the past 20 years to further determine just what you have done during your time here on the small council. I have no doubt that you have not been even remotely honest with your book writing, and as such, I need capable people here to find out what the hell you've done," said Naruto while Petter looked very unhappy right now. "I am the Master of Coin for a reason, your grace. Without me to manage the finances, all of King's Landing, if not the 7 kingdoms, will fall apart," protested Petter while the young Baratheon king glared at him. "As I said to you earlier, Petter Baelish, you are no longer Master of Coin, or the owner of the brothels. You are stripped of everything you own, Petter Baelish, with the exception being the clothing you are wearing now. Be grateful I don't have you thrown out of here naked to be mocked and beaten at my discretion," said Naruto with his voice full of the authority one would find in a king. "Your grace, I must protest this harsh action. It is unjust," said Petter while thinking of all the money, his information network, and the blackmail he had on influential lords being lost to him. "Do not speak to me about what is unjust, Petter Baelish. You will be confined to a room here in the Red Keep until I say otherwise. Or would you prefer I simply extend your so-called unjust punishment by throwing you in the black cells? Or maybe I should take your head off now and be done with you?" questioned Naruto in a deathly cold tone with Littlefinger now sweating under his gaze. "No, your grace. I will humbly accept your decision," whispered Petter in a bitter tone of voice while Naruto motioned 2 of his Kingsguard to take the man outside. "Not to press the advantage, but you really should kill him now before he has a chance to flee, your grace. Petter Baelish is very snake-like in nature and has some powerful friends willing to help him out if called upon," said Tyrion, since he never did like Littlefinger and blamed him for what Catelyn Stark did in trying to have him arrested for Bran Stark's attempted murder. "I'm sure he does have friends, Uncle Tyrion. Paid friends. We'll see how long they're his friends when Littlefinger no longer has money to pay them," said Naruto while he saw Pycelle shifting nervous, but would wait to deal with the man later. "On another related subject discussed earlier, your grace, There is the matter of the North seeking independence from the crown. Even now, Robb Stark is being called the king in the North. If we do not do something soon, other kingdoms may break off as well, and seek their own independence, added Varys with a hint of concern in his voice. Yes, such an event is something the Seven Kingdoms cannot afford. What is the main reason for the North acting in this manner? Aside from Ned Stark's imprisonment and later on his death? Asked Naruto with Tyrion making a noise since he felt the need to speak. That is quite the long list, I'm afraid. First, it was Ned Stark being arrested on charges of treason in plotting against the late King Robert Baratheon. Second, was Ned Stark's death as you just mentioned. Third would be my father fighting for Joffrey to keep his crown as king. Fourth, are the 2 attempts made on one Bran Stark's life, which Catelyn Stark has blamed on my house, and to be more exact, me? Said Tyrion while wincing at that particular memory. We still have Ned Stark's body? Asked Naruto with Varys nodding. Most of it. I'm afraid the head is on a pike, rotting away as we speak. Joffrey showed it to Lady Sansa in an act of cruelty toward her. The rest of the body was given to hungry dogs on orders by Joffrey until they were done with him. While a majority of the body is still intact for the most part, I would not recommend showing the remains to Lady Stark if she were to ask to see it, said Varys while Naruto nodded with this very presence now giving off cold angry feel to it. Retrieve the body and the head to prepare for the return north to be buried in Winterfell where he belongs. Kill the dogs that Joffrey used to feast on the man's flesh and dump the dead animals in my brother's room with him in it. Every City Watch member bribed into siding with Joffrey and killing Ned Stark's men are to be sent to the wall or put to the sword. Give them all the choice to choose their fate. Speaking of swords, is Ned Stark's weapon of choice ice still in our possession? Said Naruto with Varys nodding. With the King's Justice Esser Island Pain. The very same man who took Ned Stark's head at the command of Prince Joffrey, said Varys while Naruto scowled further. I will deal with him myself. Tyrion, take your cell sword, and some trusted members of the City Watch to secure the sword along with Ned Stark's remains. If anyone gives you crap, use your authority as Hand of the King, and my authority as King to knock them on their ass. I want everything that is Ned Stark in terms of his body and weapon ready for departure back to the north in 2 days as a show of good faith in proving I am not like my idiot brother. Find some suitable and trustworthy Kingsguard to help transport the remains back to Winterfell. Also, send a raven to Robb Stark about how he should send some men back to the north to guard its flank should Balon Greyjoy decide to launch a surprise attack on the north itself. Explain to him that the Greyjoys are a bitter house and will see this as a means to exact some measure of revenge for what they will perceive as past slights, commanded Naruto with Varys nodding. The failed Greyjoy rebellion and Theon Greyjoy becoming a hostage of House Stark and the North. I will add that to the message, Your Grace, said Varys, knowing that alone would make Robb Stark think to defend his back should the negotiations Theon tried with his father ultimately failed. There is also the issue surrounding the rumors about Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen not being the late King Robert's children. Ned Stark apparently told Stannis about this in a message sent by Raven before his death, and Stannis has decided to share the news with all of the Seven Kingdoms, said Tyrion while mentioning the last one offhandedly to the others. Lies. Joffrey is every bit of royalty as King Robert was in life, protested Pycelle while Naruto directed some killer intent at the once again nervous old man. Grand Maester, do you take anyone in this room for a fool? Asked Naruto while the old man shook his head no. Of course not, Your Grace. It's just the idea of Joffrey Baratheon being well born from that is not something one wishes to believe, replied Pycelle with Naruto nodding since he could see that. And yet deep down, you knew the truth. Which is why you conspired with Littlefinger, Cersei, and Jaime Lannister to ensure Jon Arryn died. Didn't you? Demanded Naruto while Pycelle sputtered in protest. I did no such thing, Your Grace. I am innocent of any wrong, said Pycelle, but was interrupted by Naruto slamming his fist on the table to the shock of the other two in the room, since the act caused the room to shake violently like it had been hit by a storm. Do not lie to me, Pycelle. I hate liars, yelled Naruto, since he had always felt that way about people lying to get what they want and just couldn't take it anymore. It was bad enough he had to deal with it in Essos with the wise masters or rich nobles flaunting their wealth to buy slaves for their amusement. But it even worse with Pycelle and Littfinger, since those two knew more about lying and deceiving than knowing how to do their own jobs on the small council. Pycelle knew too much, talked too much, and lied too much while acting like a feeble old man at times to make people believe he was not a threat. Which just wasn't true. Petyr Baelish lied to everyone every single damn day, from what Naruto sensed from the man the moment he entered the throne room to see the rumored heir to Robert Baratheon's rule. Hell, Naruto wouldn't be surprised if the man didn't know how to speak the truth, and was the one skill Littfinger was incapable of doing. Ours is the fury indeed, thought Tyrion and Varys while seeing Pycelle shivering in fear. "I'm sorry, Your Grace," whispered Pycelle with Naruto scowling further before taking a very deep breath and regaining control of his temper. "I don't want your weak apology, Pycelle. What I want is the truth. Did you or did you not conspire against Jon Arryn and Ned Stark when they got too close to the truth about my brother's real parentage?" asked Naruto with Pycelle nodding, since there was no point in denying it now. "Yes, Your Grace, I did." Jon Arryn was looking at Robert's bastards and comparing them to Cersei's 3 children. He borrowed the book detailing the lineage of the 4 great houses of the 7 kingdoms to further gather evidence against your mother. When he asked for the book, I knew the late hand of the king would discover the truth, and I told the queen about it. From there, she conspired with her brother Jaime Lannister, Petyr Baelish, and one other who was capable of poisoning Jon Arryn under everyone's nose. "Someone nobody suspected would be capable of doing the dreadful deed," said Pycelle with Naruto frowning and saw Varys frowning too. "Who is this other person?" asked Naruto with Pycelle hesitating for a moment. "Jon Arryn's own wife, Lisa Tully Arryn of the Vale. She poisoned him," said Pycelle with Varys and Tyrion looking at him like he just said the White Walkers had crossed the wall. "Why would she agree to poison her own husband?" asked Naruto while not seeing the connection to the woman killing her husband and joining in the conspiracy. "I might be able to answer that, Your Grace. It is a well-known fact Petyr Baelish was a ward of House Tully in Riverrun. He apparently fell in love with Catelyn Tully, but she was engaged to Brandon Stark, Ned Stark's older brother and future Warden of the North prior to Robert's rebellion. After his death at the hands of the Mad King, Catelyn married Ned Stark despite what Petyr had hoped was his second chance to marry the woman of his dreams. Sadly, it was not to be for Petyr Baelish. As for Lisa Tully, she loved Petyr Baelish the same way he loved Catelyn Tully. Unlike her sister, Lisa never warmed up to her husband Jon Arryn, who was a much older man, and would spend his days in King's Landing dealing with King Robert instead of attending to the needs of his wife. If I were to make an educated guess, Lisa Arryn still holds a great deal of love for Petyr Baelish, and he convinced her to do the deed of killing her husband with the poison provided by the Grand Maester here, said Varys with Pycelle nodding. So that's why she was so hell-bent in having me blamed for the death of Jon Arryn. The woman had a very crazed look in her eyes when I spent my short time in the Vale, added Tyrion with Naruto thinking things over in his head. I see. This does pose a serious problem. One that cannot be handled swiftly like I had hoped it would, said Naruto with his mind thinking a mile a minute. It is clear Petyr Baelish is guilty of treason on multiple levels, Your Grace. Sadly, if we kill him now, we make ourselves an enemy of the Vale. Lisa Arryn might even join her forces with the North if it benefits her cause to see us destroyed for killing Petyr Baelish, or if she learns of him being imprisoned by what she will believe are false charges against her not-so-secret love, said Varys while Naruto nodded. I did not just become king of the 7 kingdoms only to have this entire city burned to the ground at the hands of multiple enemies. So we must act accordingly. Pycelle, you are no longer Grand Maester. You lost that right when you conspired against 2 hands of the king and will be immediately replaced with someone far more fitting of the position. Until that time, the position is vacant, and I leave my hand of the king to find someone who can do it properly in your stead, replied Naruto with Pycelle weakly nodding. And what is to become of me during this time, Your Grace? Asked Pycelle fearfully, since death or the wall did not appeal to him in the slightest in terms of choices. For now, you will spend your remaining days in the black cells until I say otherwise for your crimes. Should the Citadel wish to punish you, I will allow it provided what they decide to do is a befitting punishment. Be grateful I don't put you to the sword right now, old man. I am very tempted, replied Naruto with Pycelle nodding. Thank you for this mercy, Your Grace, whispered Pycelle with Naruto nodding before summoning more men to come into the room and take the former Grand Maester away. The small council seems to be getting smaller, remarked Tyrion with Naruto nodding. Sadly, it's not something I wished to happen shortly after becoming king. But given how things have been prior to my arrival, it cannot be helped in the slightest. Varys, send a raven to the citadel immediately. Let them know what Pycelle has done in violation of their laws and request that a new maester be immediately appointed as Grand Maester of King's Landing. Also, send a raven to both Stannis and Renly about me being the late King Robert's firstborn son. Make sure they understand there is no disputing the facts surrounding my claims and that my father even called me his son upon my birth. List in the message all the names of those who were witnesses to the event, including Jon Arryn. His name alone holds weight to my claim, even if his death lightens it. At the very least, I can hopefully get both men to stop fighting for the Iron Throne, and fight for me instead against the Lannisters. Also, when you send a raven to Robb Stark, ensure he knows that his sister Sansa will not be treated poorly while I rule as king, and inform him that I do not have his younger sister Arya Stark. Speaking of the girl, where is she exactly? Said Naruto, since getting the support of the North and being in their good graces would go a long way in the future. She went missing following Joffrey's move to take the Iron Throne and after Ned Stark was executed. Not to question your judgment, your grace, but should we let Robb Stark know about this too? Asked Varys while Tyrion looked nervous since both girls were the leverage over House Stark if it was believed House Lannister had the two female Starks in their possession. While Tyrion believed letting Robb Stark know about Sansa being safe in the hands of the new, and rightful, king, he had misgiving about revealing Arya being lost to them. Yes, inform him I will announce Ned Stark's so-called confession was invalid on its face and he was pressured into confessing, with a sword poised to come down on his poor daughter's neck. Any man who loves his child, much less his daughter, would have done the same thing in Ned Stark's place. Inform Robb Stark that I will be ordering the city watch and the Kingsguard not corrupted by my mother to find Arya in the city, despite the fact I suspect the girl may have already escaped King's Landing, and is trying to get back home to Winterfell. Let him know I will return Sansa to him once I am certain that safe passage can be made available to her, and the same can be said about Arya if the girl is found. I have been told many times that my father had a great deal of respect for Ned Stark and the bond the two had was unmatched. Loyalty to one another in times of crisis and supporting each other when asked for it without question. I will continue that tradition with myself and Robb Stark in the hopes we can keep such bonds alive for the future and the preservation of the Seven Kingdoms, said Naruto while Varys' smile increased and knew this man would be a great benefit to the realm. I will carry out the order immediately, your grace, replied Varys humbly. Please do it now, Varys. Uncle Tyrion, you and I need to talk. Alone, said Naruto with Varys nodding and left the room silently as always. What do you need to talk to me about, your grace? Or am I allowed to call you nephew now? Asked Tyrion while pouring a cup of wine for himself. The rumors about my mother and my uncle Jaime birthing my siblings. Before today, when it was practically revealed in this room. You knew they were true, didn't you? You knew Cersei and Jaime had an incestuous affair long before anyone else did, am I right? Asked Naruto with Tyrion pausing for a second in his drinking before he finished it and staring at his now empty wine cup. Yes, I knew the rumors were true long before anyone else knew the horrible truth behind their forbidden affair with each other. My brother and sister have always been close in terms of family bonds. Obsessively so from what I have seen when they think no one is looking. With Robert's constant whoring, it was inevitable that Cersei would find herself in the arms of another man to punish him in her own way. Though I doubt that the overall concept for revenge against Robert by fucking another man applied to our brother Jaime being said man to do it. If father found out, he would have Cersei and her 3 children killed, and as for Jaime, I don't know how father would punish him since he was meant to be the heir to Castle Rock, said Tyrion, knowing his father was among the most ruthless men in all of the Seven Kingdoms and would do just about anything possible to make his enemies suffer for even the smallest slights against his legacy. Even if it was said legacy that caused the slight in the first place. Joffrey aside, we also have to figure out what to do with Myrcella and Tommen, since we both know neither of them can claim to be of royal blood if this gets out. I don't want my remaining half-siblings to suffer further for the stupidity that is Joffrey's actions. Or the actions of their fucked up mother, said Naruto, knowing his mother was an idiot and didn't think things through simply because she believed royalty had all the power. That she held all the power when in truth, Cersei held none. Flashback read: Keep Cersei's room. The previous evening, Naruto entered his mother's room. She was sitting in a chair reading in front of a desk and pretending to look calm. But Naruto knew otherwise. She was a fury of emotions right now. Anger and hatred being chief among them. Did he care? No. Why would he care when the woman in front of him sent her firstborn son to Essos to become one of the Unsullied? The Unsullied. She wanted him to become slave soldier without a and thus not a real man. The masters of Astapor thought slave soldiers with S could not focus on the tasks given to them because all they would think about were fucking women in their free time. Have you come to kill me? Or are you going to simply stare at me like you have never seen a beautiful woman like your mother before today? Asked Cersei while she looked up from her book at him. Kill you? And become a kinslayer? You must think so lowly of your firstborn son to think I would go so low in removing you from my life. It is surprising though that you would think such things given how low Joffrey has become since being raised by you. Given the rumors of his cruelty, I have expected one of his younger siblings to meet his or her end by now, commented Naruto calmly while he saw Cersei glare at him for that last remark. Joffrey is a good son. My one true firstborn son among my children. Not the monster you were when I brought you screaming into the world, said Cersei with Naruto scoffing at her words. The good son? What good has he done? Tell me, what grand thing has my brother done to make you proud of him? Aside from killing a harmless pregnant cat? Going back on his word to spare Ned Stark upon confessing his so-called crimes against the crown? Or ordering the execution of Ned Stark right on the steps of the Great Sept of Baelor? You do realize the last one is considered a sin in the eyes of the Seven, right? You do know Joffrey just damned House Lannister for future generations to come, right? Asked Naruto while Cersei glared at him and stood up from her seat. I don't have to justify his actions to you, monster. Your very presence is revolting to me and I won't stand for it, said Cersei angrily while she walked toward him. Really? I could say the same about you. Though between the two of us, who is the more disgusting? The man with mismatched eyes, who was only guilty of having strong family traits, resulting from multiple houses marrying into each other several generations ago? Or, the man's mother, who constantly fucked her twin brother Jaime, and produced 3 children born of their incestuous affair while trying to cover it up by any and all means necessary? Not to mention your more recent UAL affair with your first cousin Lancel Lannister, who is your father's brother's son. I wonder what grandfather would think or do if he learned the horrible truth behind your 3 children. Or the fact you spread your legs like a whore, but only for members of your own family? Questioned Naruto before he caught the hand moving to strike him in the face. You have no right to judge me, my son. I did what I had to do. I did what I have always had to do, and that is protect my family from harm, whispered Cersei venomously while Naruto once more scoffed at her. And what about me, my so-called mother? I am family too. You brought me into this world all those years ago. You screamed and cried out as I did shortly before I was born. Yet you cast me aside simply because my father chose to fuck whores and wenches over you. You blamed me for his whoring because of my deformity, as you called it when I was younger. You blamed Lyanna Stark too simply because father loved her even after she died and you couldn't get out of a dead woman's shadow long after she was buried in the ground. Remarked Naruto before shoving his mother back. What happened to the handmaiden I entrusted with your demise and suffering? Is she still alive, or is she dead? Asked Cersei while watching her son carefully. She died when I was 12 years old. From an illness no less. Still, the time I spent with her were among my more happier moments. She was more of a mother to me during my first week following my exile than you were for the first 4 years of my birth. I don't even acknowledge you as my mother. Kushina was my mother. As far as I am concerned, you Cersei Lannister are a whore, who gets off on incest-based relationships with her twin brother, and on occasion when Jaime isn't around, her first cousin. Grandfather would be so proud of you in becoming his great legacy he left behind to continue on the Lannister name, answered Naruto with Cersei's hate-filled glare increasing at the end when his voice became laced with sarcasm. So what will you do now? With me? Joffrey? Myrcella? Tommen? Will you be like Ned Stark or Renly? Plan to place us under arrest? Hold us all hostage until my father stops fighting the northern barbarians while you betray me further by making peace with them all? Demanded Cersei with Naruto nodding. Yes, I am for the most part. Joffrey will have the choice of the Black Cells or the Wall to spend the rest of his life for his crimes. Prince or not, king or not, he did horrible things, and the sin of killing Ned Stark where he did demands my half-brother be punished for it. But don't worry, Myrcella and Tommen will not be harmed under my orders. They are innocent in all of this and don't deserve to be punished for your fuck-ups with Joffrey, said Naruto while Cersei sneered at him. You being the worst of them all. Had I known you would have survived Essos thanks to that bitch of a handmaiden, I would have thrown your drugged body into the sea myself. Exclaimed Cersei angrily at her son, only to be grabbed by the throat a second later, lifted off the ground, and slammed into the nearest wall with Naruto's iron grip for a hand holding her in place. Do not mistake me for a man who shows mercy to his enemies or shows it lightly in the first place. You are my enemy, Cersei. You are an enemy to House Baratheon. You are an enemy to House Stark. You are an enemy to the Seven Kingdoms as a whole because of your inability to let go of your power with the changing times. You would not let Ned Stark become regent because it would mean you would not longer hold power as queen. You would not allow anyone to deny Joffrey the Iron Throne because you couldn't stand the idea of being without power and manipulating Joffrey to do your every bidding from the shadows, which does provide a great deal of it. But power does not last. It does not in the hands of a kings, queens, the princes, the princesses, the high-born, the low-born, the sinners, or the septons themselves. Power leaves us and the more we try to grab onto it, the faster it is taken away, and we are soon left with nothing. Just as you are now left with nothing, replied Naruto as he held Cersei in his iron grip. You won't kill me. You will become a kinslayer. You would lose the support of the people and many would wish for Joffrey to take the throne again, said Cersei while Naruto just gave her a quick nod. I know, which is why I won't kill you. Unlike Joffrey or yourself, I do not embrace the idea of killing my own blood to further my ambitions, said Naruto before throwing her onto the floor. How noble of you, spat Cersei bitterly before she found one of her hands stepped on by Naruto's boot and cried out in pain. You misunderstand. I won't kill you or Joffrey, but that doesn't mean I won't hurt either of you in other more profound ways. Like making your bodies reflect both your twisted minds and your very putrid-looking souls, said Naruto with his sword now drawn for Cersei to stare at in fear. You would draw your sword against me? Your mother? Your own queen? Demanded Cersei while staring at the sword before she looked right into his eyes. You are not worthy of being called my mother. In the eyes of the seven, Kushina of House Uzumaki was more worthy of being called such a title. As for being my queen, you are queen regent, if only that for now, and thus have no real power here. Your title is hollow. Your power from said title is hollow. Just like your bitter heart beating in your chest while you think up some scheme to subvert some measure of control over me, said Naruto with Cersei crying out in pain from his boot putting pressure on her hand. You are a monster, a demon. I will have your head on a pike for this. My father will not allow you to get away with this. Even if you are of his blood through me. A Lannister always pays their debts. Exclaimed Cersei through the pain of her hand being crushed. Your father, my grandfather will do nothing to me, Cersei. Nor will you have him try to do anything to me. Why? Because if you do, I will reveal every sin you have ever done in life all the way up until now. From fucking your brother to having 3 of his children and passing them off as Robert's own. Not to mention fucking Lancel from the scent of your choice of soap I smelled on him that is now on you. In fact, if I had more evidence, I would charge both you and Lancel with conspiracy to kill my father. I could reveal so much about you that no one in the Seven Kingdoms would come to your aid if you were thrown in the Black Cells. Not for all the gold in Castle Rock. If you challenge me on this, Cersei, you will lose. You will die. Mother or not, queen or not, do we understand one another? Whispered Naruto in a deathly while Cersei grit her teeth. Fuck you, exclaimed Cersei, but cried out again when Naruto pressed his foot down even harder on the woman's hand to the point of nearly breaking it. Do we understand one another? Naruto asked again while his cold look intensified to further enforce he was in no mood for her defiance. For now, answered Cersei with a bitterness in her tone. Good. Just remember this, my so-called mother. Never start a war you cannot win or you are guaranteed to lose. And before you say anything further, this applies to the Game of Thrones too, said Naruto before walking out of the room and leaving his mother to stew in her anger the rest of the night. End flashback. Myrcella and Tommen are innocent as one can hope to be with children. Not a single evil act between them, thank the gods. It seems they flipped a coin for both and it came out good for their minds not being plagued by madness. I was actually thinking up a plan to protect Myrcella from this war before you first arrived and made your presence known in the throne room, said Tyrion with Naruto looking a bit intrigued. What do you propose? Asked Naruto with Tyrion grinning. I planned to put Myrcella in an arranged marriage with Prince Doran Martell's son and heir Trystane Martell in Dorne. I have been speaking to Prince Doran through messages sent by ravens and seeking to end the bad blood between our houses. What better way to protect Myrcella and heal the wounds of the past at the same time? Replied Tyrion with Naruto nodding since it was a sound plan. The older brother of the Red Viper. I actually met Prince Oberyn in Essos in the fighting pits a few years ago. Good fighter. Very passionate on multiple levels. Does either Prince Doran or Oberyn believe the rumors about Myrcella's own questionable parentage? Do they even know about it or care? Asked Naruto curiously since he suspected the younger prince was more open-minded given his loyalty was to both genders. Dorne is a very open kingdom when it comes to having lovers and birthing bastards of all shapes and sizes. Also, Prince Doran has assured me Myrcella would not be harmed in any way despite her being a Lannister. In his last message he said, and I quote, "We do not hurt little girls in Dorne," after I expressed my worry for her overall safety. Given the bad blood between our houses, it was understandable, said Tyrion with Naruto nodding. Yes, Prince Oberyn was angry at me when he found out who my father and mother really are when I revealed it to him during our last time slugging it out in the fighting pits. My father was wrong to let the Mountain get away with what he did to Elia Martell and her children on Tywin Lannister's orders. Something I plan to correct in the near future to bring Dorne further into the fold of doing future business with King's Landing once again, said Naruto while Tyrion nodded since killing children was a very big sin no matter if you were royal blood or not. What about Tommen? He's a good lad, naive to the ways of the world, but honest all the same, questioned Tyrion while Naruto thought things over in his mind. We can't have both go to Dorne. For now, Tommen will just have to stay here in King's Landing with me until a suitable solution reveals itself to me. Not to mention there is the issue with Joffrey and how to punish him for his many crimes. The wall comes to mind, remarked Naruto with his eyes narrowing while thinking about how to deal with the little shit without resorting to kinslaying. And my father, your grandfather, he won't take this lying down nephew. This will be considered a major affront to him on multiple levels. Even if you are his grandson, said Tyrion with Naruto smirking. Personally, I don't care what the old lion thinks at the moment. I am still his grandson above all things and now the king of the Seven Kingdoms. If Tywin Lannister feels I am inadequate as a king, he can come here alone without his army, and see what I changed for the better here in this city when this stupid war is over. Provided no one kills him at the end, said Naruto calmly while his uncle nodded. Your Grace, let me through. I bring horrible news, exclaimed a member of the Kingsguard running into the room panting heavily. What terrible news? Asked Naruto with the man breathing and catching his breath. It's your mother and Queen Regent, your Grace. She has fled King's Landing with Prince Joffrey with the aid of her cousin Lancel Lannister and the other armed men from House Lannister. They attacked the Hound and wounded him after he killed a large number of them during the escape and have fled west to Castle Rock on horseback, said the Kingsguard while Naruto and Tyrion frowned. What about Myrcella and Tommen? Asked Tyrion knowing Cersei would seek to get them too. They were unable to get Princess Myrcella or Prince Tommen from their room's Lord Hand. It would seem the Queen Regent only had enough time to grab one of her 3 children and chose Joffrey, answered the Kingsguard while Naruto sighed at how things went sideways on him. And so it begins. Time to see if I can be a man remotely worthy of being called a king in this time of great crisis, said Naruto to himself while hoping he could do everything possible to protect the people of King's Landing. Tyrion Lannister had lived a long and interesting life. More so probably than most people could or would in his position as a dwarf. No one else could say they lived to survive half the things he did nor endure the various pains one in his position go through all their life. Even more as the hand of the king in terms of being a temporary one and now being a permanent one until relieved of his duties by the king. Or until his death, whichever came first. What troubles you, my lion? I thought you would be happy with how things turned out for us, asked Shay while she watched him at his desk where paperwork was sitting to be signed. I am happy, my dear. But from what Bronn told me about my nephew Naruto makes me worried, said Tyrion, since he and his hired cell sword had a conversation about the new king soon after the first small council meeting. Flashback Tower of the Hand several days ago. I'm telling you, Tyrion, that man is him, exclaimed Bronn with a hint of fear in his voice while Tyrion looked at him in confusion. Care to explain further? I don't know why you are acting like this, but clearly you know my nephew from your own time traveling the word, said Tyrion while getting a cup of wine to drink. I do know him, or rather I know of him. Your nephew, and now king of the Seven Kingdoms, is known as Cage over in Essos. It is an old Valyrian word meaning shadow, replied Bronn while Tyrion looked at him in shock. I didn't know you spoke the language. I'm a little rusty myself, but I can get by when I have to with it, remarked Tyrion while Bronn ran his hand through his hair. I only know the damn word because I asked someone when I was watching a match in the fighting pits when I was a much younger man. The people in the arena were chanting, "Cage, Cage, Cage," over and over again when he walked into the arena. It was just him fighting 5 other people, all from different backgrounds, all skilled fighters. When I asked why he was called Cage, someone said it was because he always almost killed you while in your shadow or leaving one. He could and would move so fast, you didn't realize you were dead until your body hit the ground, without your head attached, said Bronn while Tyrion frowned at this news. So my nephew is no stranger to combat. The same could be said for his father. So what has you on edge? You look ready to leap out of my window, questioned Tyrion while Bronn slowly began to calm down. I'm not on edge out of worry for a past slight. I didn't piss him off or meet the man face to face until now. Thank the gods. It's just, the man is dangerous, Tyrion. This man was a legend in the fighting pits, killing some of the best fighters those pits had to offer. Even the Red Viper of Dorne was bested by Naruto and was only spared death because the two hate your house on practically the same level. If I were to guess, the two probably are good friends, or at least respect each other a great deal not to fight the other, said Bronn, knowing he could fight those transparent Knights of the Vale, maybe a hill tribesman or two. But someone like Naruto? Fuck no. Bronn would almost prefer to fight either the Hound or even the Mountain with just his bare hands over fighting the new king. It's good to know my house can bring certain people together, commented Tyrion with Bronn shaking his head. I'm serious, Tyrion. I like you. I do. You pay well, you give me jobs where I can use my talents. But just so you know, right here and now, if you were to ask me to side with you in some scheme to betray your nephew for someone else, whether it's Joffrey, Stannis, or even Tywin Lannister himself, I will tell you my answer now as I would then. Fuck no, said Bronn while Tyrion nodding. Well, it's a good thing I have no intention of betraying my nephew. He's not like Robert or Ned Stark. He's not too blinded by his vices, if he has any. Nor does he wrap himself up in honor like a heavy cloak and expect others to follow him for it. He knows what has to be done and will get it done no matter what, said Tyrion while Bronn breathed a sigh of relief. Good. No offense, Tyrion, but your family has a fucked up history of backstabbing just about everyone they come across to get what they want, remarked Bronn while Tyrion nodded. I'm not like my family, Bronn. I'm the imp of House Lannister, remember? Everything my family would do, I do not, said Tyrion with Bronn laughing for a moment before he looked serious again. Just stay on the king's good side, Tyrion. I don't want to be given the order to kill one of the few people in King's Landing I like to be around, said Bronn before he left the room to leave his employer in thought. End flashback. I thought you said the king wasn't like his brother Joffrey? Asked Shay while Tyrion nodded. He's not, but all the same, his temper if provoked. I wonder if this feeling is something close to what my father felt when he was Hand of the King during the Targaryens' rule, said Tyrion with concern while Shay walked over to him behind his chair and wrapped her arms around him. Don't worry, my lion. From what I have heard in passing, King Naruto won't hurt those he trusts, and those who do their duty well. You have done a wonderful job as Hand of the King already. I know you will continue to do it while under this king's rule, said Shay as she comforted her lover. I hope so, my dear. I don't want either of us to be on the receiving end of his wrath, said Tyrion with a smile on his face, and was actually happier with how things happened with Naruto sitting on the Iron Throne over Joffrey. For one, he didn't have to sneak Shay around the Red Keep like he originally did when first arriving in King's Landing. Shay had been made Sansa Stark's handmaidens in order to have an excuse to keep her around without Cersei, Joffrey, or even Littlefinger from suspecting her reason for being here. Oh, Varys knew. He always knew. Nothing truly got away from him with his little birds and spinning his little webs to know what everyone around him did. But surprisingly, the spider didn't hold it over him like other would, and simply implied to Tyrion that discretion was necessary when dealing with Cersei wanting to hurt everything he loved. And speaking of Cersei, she was no longer in King's Landing. It was like the gods old and new had swooped down to answer his prayers of being allowed to be with his love without fear of Shae being targeted by his sister. Cersei's spies along with Littlefinger's own network within the city had been effectively rounded up thanks to the spider using his little birds and now were under the employ of the new king. And speaking of the king, he somehow knew of Tyrion's relationship with Shae, but did not care if they were in a relationship or not. When Naruto spoke to him in private about it, he only asked that the two be faithful to the other, and their romance didn't prevent the defense of the city during the war. Tyrion had no problem with that since he didn't plan to have his relationship with Shae interfere with his duties as Hand of the King or the other way around. Together, he along with Varys, and the king himself had been working hard to fix King's Landing of the current decaying state left by King Robert prior to his death. It would not be easy given the lack of certain resources, but Naruto had believed they could do it, and Tyrion saw the man was truly determined to endure the hardships with everyone else. House Stark Army encampment 3 days later. Robb Stark looked at the message in his hands. He had read it over and over again at least 5 times. Even after reading it that many times, the words on the parchment were hard to process within his mind. Not surprising since it was hard to believe. A new king was sitting on the Iron Throne yet again? One who could claim the Iron Throne by right and blood as Robert's firstborn and, if rumors about Joffrey were true, only son? Dear Lord Stark, I write to you in the name of Naruto of House Baratheon and the new rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms. Contrary to what many know or believe, Robert did in fact have a child with Cersei Lannister almost 20 years ago. It was during a dreadful storm at night that almost brought King's Landing to her knees. Due to a strange moment in time following Naruto's birth, King Robert had decreed his son was considered to be stillborn, and hid his son out of anger mixed with shame. No doubt in regards to certain Targaryen features manifesting themselves in his son. Namely in the eyes. Before the change, they were in fact very much blue like any Baratheon should possess. Robert himself had called Naruto his son before the gods decided to throw their hands into the mess. After 4 years of living in King's Landing, Robert had sent the boy away to Essos, and the queen tried to have him become an Unsullied. I don't know if you have heard of the Unsullied by any chance, Lord Stark, but I assure you that becoming one is most unpleasant, and one does not have the ability to produce offspring if they do. My king has commanded that I make contact with you, and to bring about some measure of control to this dreadful war. He has no quarrel with you, Lord Stark, and does not wish one to have one. As your father and his father were sworn brothers many years ago, started during their time fostered by Jon Arryn, the king wishes to keep that tradition alive. To that end, he wishes to propose a brotherhood ceremony with you once this stupidity of a war with House Lannister is over. To further prove the king means what he says, as a show of good faith, some trusted men from the Kingsguard are being sent to the north with the body of your father Ned Stark along with the sword ice being sent directly to you to use. As the new Lord of House Stark, it falls to you wielding the sword as your father once did when he was Lord of House Stark. In addition, it will no doubt please you to know the king is taking the protection of your sister Lady Sansa very seriously now that the former King Joffrey is no longer a threat to her life here in King's Landing. Sadly, the war itself is another issue with the roads not being secure enough for moving someone of her position to another location without it being known by the Lannisters. If they learned of her being escorted to you or the north, I have no doubt they would seek to capture Lady Sansa, and used as a hostage to trade for the Kingslayer Jaime Lannister. Fortunately, I have it on the king's word that once safe passage has been made available, he will ensure Lady Sansa is returned to you and to Winterfell unharmed. Sadly, this is where the good news ends, and the bad news begins. For while Lady Sansa is now safe under the much-needed protection of King Naruto, your younger sister Arya Stark cannot be found within the city. King Naruto optimistically suspects she escaped shortly after Ned Stark's execution and she is making her way north to Winterfell as we speak. At the same time, the City Watch and the Kingsguard are on the lookout for Arya in case she is still in the city with instructions to bring her to the Red Keep to be with her sister. All the same, do keep an eye out for your sister if she has escaped the city, and know should Arya be found within King's Landing you will be informed immediately. One final thing you need to know at the behest of my king is the status of Winterfell and how exposed the north is with the majority of the army you command no longer in it. We know you sent Theon Greyjoy back to his father in the hopes of getting the Kraken to side against the Lannisters. No doubt you did it due to the need for ships to aid your war effort. A sound plan, but my king fears your choice in a possible ally was quite poor, and I honestly agree with him. Theon's return to his house will only spur Balon Greyjoy to strike when he learns the defenses in the north are at their weakest. With your domain fully exposed to a flanking maneuver, Balon Greyjoy will see this as a means to finally get revenge on the north, your house, and everyone who fought against him during the Greyjoy Rebellion. King Naruto also suggests that you send some of your men back to fortify the coast of the north and any key points the Greyjoy fleet might attack. Whether you listen to such sound advice is entirely up to you, Lord Stark. Varys, the Master of Whispers. Robb Stark put the message down and sighed while reflecting on the words written on the parchment. The spider and this new king, who had apparently replaced Joffrey, thank the gods, were not wrong. It had been some time since Theon had gone to see his father in the hopes of securing the Greyjoy fleet to attack the Lannisters in the Westernlands. He had been unsure of Theon's idea to ask the Ironborn for help, but his sworn brother had assured Robb that his father would do anything for his remaining son and heir to the Iron Islands. But no word had reached Robb of Theon's success in bringing House Greyjoy into the fold with their fleet, and it was making the young wolf increasingly nervous. The Ironborn were obsessed with stealing what did not belong to them, with their house motto being, "We do not sow." Why make something when it was easier to take it from someone who did? Why put in the effort to make a sword when you could just take it from someone in a surprise attack before running said sword through the victim's belly? I was a fool to believe Theon's plan would work. And now I have left the entirety of the north undefended from a possible Greyjoy invasion, thought Robb while looking over his map within his war tent. And what he saw disturbed him. In his haste to call the banners and starting this war with the Lannisters, he realized just how vulnerable his rear flank was in the process. The men left behind in the north to defend it were too few and too scattered to repel something like an attack from the sea. If Balon Greyjoy learned of this, which Theon would no doubt reveal, even unintentionally on his part, the Ironborn would prepare to attack the north, and return to their ways like they did in the past. "Guard!" called out Robb with one of his men coming into the tent. "Yes, your grace?" asked the bannerman. "Wake the other lords and tell them I am calling an emergency meeting. Tell them it is an extremely important one. Go now," commanded Robb, with the man nodding, and went off into a run. Robb could only pray he wasn't too late to act to defend his home. With Stannis 2 days later. Stannis of House Baratheon was not amused by the message the spider sent him and was half tempted to throw it into the fire to watch it burn. Maybe it would appease the Lord of Light and give him an army capable of defeating Renly. Bah, this god the Red Woman was preaching about was getting on his nerves. All she said was, "Lord of Light this," and "Lord of the Light that," while saying the flames spoke to her. Showed her visions. Told her how the Lord of Light favored him as the one true king of the Seven Kingdoms now that Robert was dead. So how did this news of Robert actually have a legitimate son escape his notice or the Red Woman? Dear Stannis of House Baratheon, I pray to the Seven that this reaches you in time. While you may have strayed from the faith of your father and house, I trust in the gods that are good to speed this message along. As you may have no doubt heard by now, a new king has come to replace Joffrey, and is Robert Baratheon's child by blood. The news is indeed true. The new king is indeed Robert's son. His only legitimate one. He was born nearly 20 years ago on the night of a great storm surrounding King's Landing. Many heard the child was stillborn, but the truth is the child lived. But sadly, due to the child sporting Targaryen features in the form of his eyes, Robert decreed the boy stillborn, and hid him away for 4 long years. After such time went by, your late brother sent him off into exile in the land of Essos, and the Queen Cersei had secretly ordered the handmaiden in charge of his care to turn the boy into an unsullied. However, I took measures to ensure the latter did not happen, and the boy was raised for a time by the handmaiden. I am well aware of the situation regarding Joffrey's questionable parentage from what the late Ned Stark wrote to you before his death. Sadly, the man did not know of Naruto, or else he would have made such news known to you and Renly to prepare your house to back Robert's only legitimate son. Yes, contrary to Cersei's other 3 children, Naruto is indeed Robert's by blood, and even if Joffrey was in fact Robert's by blood, he is not the firstborn son. Thus by blood and by right of succession, Naruto is Robert's successor to the crown, and you must swear fealty to him. I know it is something you would rather not do, given how you feel the Iron Throne is yours by right as Robert's brother, but for the good of the realm, this must happen. Support your one true blood nephew in these dark times and help bring peace to the 7 kingdoms before this war escalates even further out of control. Varys, the Master of Whispers. Could it be a trick? Someone claiming to be Robert's long-lost son? Surely not even the spider could fabricate such a ruse to circumvent Joffrey from ruling on the Iron Throne if he felt the brat was unworthy. Which Joffrey was given the truth about how the boy's true bloodline parentage was incestuous and very disturbing. But this new player claiming to be king was different. Robert's son by blood, his own nephew by blood. Sure, Robert had 20 bastards running around, but from what Stannis learned, the shit Joffrey had most of them murdered, and only one was rumored to escape the lion's jaws. Where that one was now was anyone's guess at this point. "What troubles you, my king?" asked Melisandre while she leaned over his shoulder and looked at the message on the table. "My brother had a son. A long-lost son. He's only just returned to Westeros and kicked out the pretender through his right by blood and the older sibling," commented Stannis, knowing the rules of blood and right succession enforced Robert's legitimate son claim to the Iron Throne. "The blood is tainted, my king. The lion's blood from his mother makes him unfit to rule the 7 kingdoms. What his mother did to have the other 3 children was madness similar to the Targaryens, your grace. For if she could lay with her own blood and sire such abominations, who is to say the madness did not spread to this one too? Are you going to bend the knee, swear fealty to this new future Mad King? You do not possess the madness. You also have the blood of a king in you just as your brothers do, but now with King Robert dead, you are the one worthy of the Iron Throne. Not this tainted child sired between the stag and the lion," whispered Melisandre while she took the message from Stannis and threw it into the nearby fire to watch it burn. "He is my eldest brother's legitimate son. Even if what you say is true, I cannot raise my banner against him. The rules of succession are clear. Not only is the new king sitting on the Iron Throne Robert's son by blood, but is protected by the rules of succession. I can only be king if he were to die before siring a legitimate heir of his own in the near future after he marries," remarked Stannis while Melisandre let out a chuckle. "So, use the rules in your favor, my king. Slay the tainted one. Take the throne by force as your older brother did against the Targaryens. Slay the future mad Baratheon king before his strength can grow and he gathers the other lords to King's Landing and infects them with his madness. End his rule before it can truly begin and be the king that saved the world from the madness of this creature who calls himself your brother's son," said Melisandre while she stared into the flames to see what her god would show her. Sadly, her Lord of Light refused to give her any guidance at the moment, but she was confident he would. "Even if I wanted to kill my nephew to claim the Iron Throne, I don't have the numbers to take the city. I need a massive army to take King's Landing, and right now Renly has the larger force. If anyone will bend the knee and swear fealty to the young king, it will be him. All the bannermen of my house will support the new king on the Iron Throne, and I will be seen as an usurper like my brother was against the Targaryens. No one will rally to my camp, even if they did convert to your religion," said Stannis angrily, knowing with Naruto being Robert's rightful, and only, legitimate heir, he had no chance of getting his army to fight against his nephew. "So use me and my magic, your grace. Slay Renly and claim his army. Slay your nephew and claim the Iron Throne. I can give you both. The Lord of Light has chosen you. He does not have to follow the rules of men regarding the line of succession. What he wants is to bring about a world where all are united under his greatness. And by giving him what my God wants, I can give you everything you want. Everything you were denied by your older brother. What your younger brother is trying to deny you by rallying others to him to be the next king. If he cannot become king, your brother will seek to influence your nephew, and further put you lower in the position power. You, who should have been rewarded for your efforts in the last 2 wars. You, who held your own in a siege against House Tyrell at your brother's command, yet was denied your birthright. Your oldest brother insulted you, slighted you, Your youngest tries to usurp you. Your nephew will seek to deny any claim of power you deserve to have, just as his father did all those years ago. They have all committed unspeakable crimes against you, my king. And for each crime, the punishment for such things is death. Royalty or not, regardless if they are your kin, whispered Melisandre, knowing her words would worm their way into Stannis's mind and he would listen to her. If I do this, I have to take out Renly first. He has the numbers to best me thanks to his farce of a marriage to Marjorie Tyrell. Once my brother is out of the way, I will focus my attention back on my nephew, said Stannis while the Red Woman nodded. Of course, one usurper at a time. And each usurper must be handled differently, your grace. Renly through me, Naruto through your army. In the end, the Lord of Light will get what he wants, and all will be well, said Melisandre calmly, knowing she could guide these events using the flames and her magic. With Renly sometime later. Are you certain of this? Asked Renly while walking with Catelyn by his side. By the mother. My son has no interest in the Iron Throne, said Catelyn while she saw Renly nodding, knowing Catelyn Tully Stark was a woman of her word. Then I see no reason for hostility toward us. Your son can still call himself king in the north and control all the lands north of Moat Cailin, provided an oath of fealty is given, said Renly while they walked into his tent and he poured himself some wine. Brienne of Tarth standing guard at the exit of the tent. And the wording of the oath? Asked Catelyn curiously. The same one Ned Stark gave to Robert 18 years ago. Nothing less. After all, their friendship held the kingdom together. Why not ours? Replied Renly before he looked over some sealed messages now in his hand and frowned at one addressed to him by the spider himself. What is it? Asked Catelyn when she saw Renly frown at one message in particular. It is a message from King's Landing. From the spider no less, said Renly in confusion, since he didn't think the Master of Whispers would send him anything. Lord Varys? Why? Asked Catelyn in surprise. Yes, and as to the why, I don't know. Which is unusual, since sending me this would be an act of treason against the current king on the Iron Throne, said Renly while opening the parchment and began to read. He's a false king. Joffrey has none of your older brother's blood in him, said Catelyn, since her son, like Renly, had received one of the many ravens sent throughout the Seven Kingdoms about Joffrey's true parentage. I agree. Only this message from the spider says that Joffrey is no longer a king. In fact, according to this, Robert's true son has returned to claim it, said Renly in surprise. True son? But Robert's real children are bastards. None of them had the right to claim the throne, replied Catelyn in surprise. No. According to the spider, there was one. Robert had one child with Cersei before she had Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen. But my brother said he was stillborn. From what this letter has revealed, the child in question did not die that night, but kept hidden to all, and eventually sent away to Essos. Apparently, the eyes being mismatched and one being the eye of a Targaryen was too much for Robert to take, and had him sent away. Cersei even tried to have the handmaiden responsible for the boy to sell him to the masters at Astapor and become an Unsullied. But the handmaiden chose not to obey the queen and instead raised the child herself. Now he has returned, claimed the Iron Throne, and has now asked for myself along with Stannis to stop the fighting before it escalates further. That we unite under the banner of King Naruto of House Baratheon and punish those who are responsible for the chaos that is about to unfold if allowed to continue, said Renly while he reread the letter over again. And it's true? Robert does have a legitimate son? Asked Catelyn, since it could be some kind of trick by Varys. The spider said the one red and one purple eye of the child nearly 20 years ago were the dead giveaway to prove this man claiming to be Naruto of House Baratheon is in fact the same child. The eyes are the most unusual in all the Seven Kingdoms and no one short of Naruto's children could have a remote chance of having them. Also, according to what the spider says, the eyes themselves before their changes were a shade of blue worthy of any Baratheon, and Robert himself called the boy his son, said Renly while he digested this information within his own mind and what this meant for himself. What does this mean for you and House Tyrell? For the alliance with the North? Asked Catelyn with Renly shrugging. Nothing has changed. Your son and I will ally against House Lannister once we have dealt with my brother tomorrow. We will march against the Lannisters next, we win a decisive victory, head to King's Landing, prove ourselves to my nephew, and bring about peace to the Seven Kingdoms. I'm actually quite interested in meeting him, said Renly like it was completely simple steps to take to win. And this King Naruto? What does Lord Varys say about him? Asked Caitlyn, since she feared for her daughters in the city and what this man would do to them. For all she knew, Naruto was crueler than Joffrey, but hid his tendencies better. From what Lord Varys has written here, my nephew wishes to be a kind, fair, yet firm ruler of the Seven Kingdoms, and bring about peace to the realm of men. But to do this though, the king needs this war with House Lannister to end quickly, and before winter comes. Apparently, my nephew embraces the house motto of your husband, and agrees with you when saying winter is coming, remarked Renly before letting out a sigh and drank some more wine. I must send a raven to King's Landing, to have the king return my daughters unharmed to the north. If this king is truly merciful and just as Varys claims, he listened to the words of a worried mother, and will let them go, said Caitlyn, knowing her pleas for mercy to this new king would be a test on whether he was a good man or a monster to pretending to be one. I'll let you send one tonight. I'm a bit curious about what my nephew looks like, since my imagination regarding what an actual child my brother and Cersei sired is honestly hard to make out, said Renly with a smile on his face, since the idea of his brother and Cersei having an actual child by blood was difficult to imagine. Especially after learning the truth that none of Cersei's 3 children following Naruto were not Robert's at all. Unfortunately, the discussion was interrupted by a strong wind blowing into the tent, distracting everyone in it, and as a result, no one saw the attack before it was too late. For Stannis! Exclaimed the shadow demon after it stabbed Renly in the back. No, guards! Yelled Caitlyn, while she and Brienne were shocked to see such a creature exist outside of stories, myths, and legends. Brienne charged the creature just as the guards came into the room and saw the shadow demon with their own eyes. The sword she wielded went right through the monster, but the large woman knew the face on the demonic creature was that of Stannis Baratheon. She had heard the rumors of the Red Woman from Essos converting Stannis the Lord of Light religion practiced over in Essos, but never thought magic openly existed, or at least not anymore with the loss of the dragons. But to see a byproduct of it quite literally staring her in the face before it faded away was most unsettling. By the gods, what is that? Asked one of the men who ran into the tent and pointing a sword at the creature. The night is dark and full of terrors, rasped the shadow demon before it vanished into the darkness of the night. How could this have happened? I didn't think such horrible creatures even existed in this world. I thought such powers were only stories told to keep little girls and boys obedient and out of trouble, thought Caitlyn before she was quickly approached by Brienne. We have to leave Lady Stark. When word spreads throughout the camp of Renly's death, all who are not Tyrell bannermen will flock to Stannis. They will no doubt wish to prove themselves to Stannis by handing us over to him. I fear what would happen if the Red Woman convinces Stannis to leave us in her clutches, whispered Brienne, knowing with Renly gone, the Baratheon bannermen would move to serve the next one in the house they were sworn to serve. We must inform the Tyrells. The Baratheon bannermen here might try to attack them now that the alliance and marriage between houses is void, said Caitlyn with Brienne nodding, since it would not be honorable to let a house like the Tyrells to perish in a surprise attack by those they trusted to be allies. I agree, but we need to get the letter Renly had in his hands just before his death. If he received one from the spider, I will wager Stannis has one too, but chose to ignore it, said Caitlyn while Brienne nodded and quickly got the message written by Varys to Renly before they ran out of the tent to find the Tyrells. King's Landing, Red Keep, small council chambers. Days later. Renly is dead. As I predicted, said Naruto with a sigh and closed his eyes in mourning for his uncle he never knew, but heard good things about. While the two never met, Naruto had heard only good things about the man, and did his job well despite his secret vices. But Naruto wasn't one to judge him regarding such things. Naruto had done worse when in Essos. Killing people in the fighting pits. Killing people when he was with the Second Sons and the Golden Company. Killing people in general, really. Yes, Your Grace. Word has spread of a shadow demon of sorts being responsible for the attack and murder of your uncle Renly. Several Baratheon bannermen guarding his tent witnessed the creature, as well as Catelyn Tully Stark, and Brienne of Tarth. Before she fled back to Robb Stark's encampment, Lady Stark warned House Tyrell of Renly's death to prevent their army from being wiped out by their now former Baratheon allies. As for Brienne of Tarth, she went with Lady Stark, and is acting as her bodyguard, said Varys with Naruto sighing yet again, but it was clear to the spider that the king in front of him approved. You would think the bannermen of House Baratheon would oppose fighting for Stannis once they learned of you being Robert's son and heir. For him to fight you with this army makes no sense, remarked Tyrion in confusion. The Red Woman has poisoned his mind. She's convinced him to take the Iron Throne like my father did against the Targaryens, said Naruto, since that was not a good thing in his mind. But wouldn't the bannermen of House Baratheon fight for you over him? Asked Tyrion, since he figured House Baratheon's bannermen would side with Naruto given how he was Robert's heir and now the king of the Seven Kingdoms. They have no reason to be loyal to me simply on that principle, Tyrion. I haven't been in Westeros since I was a 4-year-old child. Hidden from the world during that time. Only a handful of people knew of my existence. Half of them wanted me dead or forever gone from this side of the world. Stannis has been around these bannermen, fought beside all these men, and is my father's brother with combat experience in leading men into battle. My house bannermen have no reason to side with me over him simply on royal blood alone. And Stannis himself is of royal blood too, given he is my father's brother and as such could be king legitimately in his own way upon my death. Something I would wager he will wish to see happening when attacking King's Landing and sacking it like Tywin Lannister successfully did all those years ago, said Naruto while he looked at the two men in the room currently being the only men trustworthy of getting things done. I hate to ask this question given how I am also dreading the answer, but when we are attacked by Stannis, can we repel him with our own forces? Asked Tyrion with Naruto looking at Varys for a second before looking back at the youngest of Tywin's children. It won't be easy, but if we plan everything, right down to the last detail, it can be done. We can win, said Naruto, knowing the defense of a city like King's Landing required the right number of people, the right number of defenses, and just the right strategy. How? Not to question your military prowess, your grace, but your uncle's forces are now much larger. He now has the ships and the men needed to take the city, said Tyrion while Naruto looked deep in thought. My uncle is a military commander and as such will act like one, which means he will need time to prepare his now much larger army. So at best, we have 2, maybe 3 more days before Uncle Stannis comes with his army ready to end all of our lives. During my time over in Essos and even in Bravos, I learned not only how to fight, but how to strategize how to defeat my enemy without raising my sword until it was necessary. In order to defeat my uncle, I must think like him. Anticipate his movements and figure out how to counter his actions with our own, said Naruto with Varys and Tyrion nodding. He knows the city well, your grace. No doubt Stannis intends to hit the weakest point of King's Landing, which in this case would be by sea. As the master of ships, your uncle has access to a very large fleet, and now an equally large number of men to manage all of them, said Very while Naruto nodded in agreement. Which means we have to counter his fleet with something greater. His fleet cannot dock on the shores of King's Landing. Once they do, we will be overrun by sheer numbers, and our walls or gates won't last long in the process. We need to cripple his fleet before any of them make landfall. We also need to figure out where my uncle would send his fleet to land where he could strike the hardest at our weakest position, said Naruto, knowing Stannis would strike at an area where his men could break into the city and overwhelm its defenders. Naruto knew this because it was exact same thing he would have done in Stannis's place if leading the attack. I have been reading up on the military history of the Seven Kingdoms, your grace, and I found one key aspect in the history books. One that may give us an idea of where Stannis may strike us in order to achieve victory, said Tyrion, who had brought the book for just this sort of meeting. What aspect are you referring to, Tyrion? Asked Naruto curiously. King's Landing is well defended, even in its current state of decay showing despite our efforts to reverse it. But looking at the history of the city since its creation, I noticed in all the battle waged to take it, only one place has been considered to be the ultimate weak spot. One that is usually well guarded by the Royal Navy and under the command of the Master of Ships. The Mud Gate, said Tyrion while pointing it out in the book from all the different wars waged around the city. Yes, I see your point, uncle. Mud Gate itself is weak on a defensive level. Very weak. It is usually well protected by a vast fleet of ships, but with most of them now in my uncle Stannis's possession, the Mud Gate is an easy target. Which means our enemy will strike here with ships and men to overpower the gate, flood the city with men, and sack King's Landing like it was going out of style, replied Naruto while reading over all the various, yet relevant pages Tyrion had marked for reading. Now begs one question, Your Grace. How do we stop the massive fleet of ships from landing and unloading wave after wave of soldiers at the Mudgate? Asked Varys with Naruto frowning. Varys, as the Master of Whispers, let us assume that you know almost, if not all the secrets within the walls of King's Landing. Would I be assuming correctly? Said Naruto with Varys nodding. I do, Your Grace. I know many secrets of the city, as I felt it was a crucial part of my role in being Master of Whispers, answered Varys with Naruto nodding while looking over a map of the city he just got off a nearby table. Which means you would know where to get something dangerous. Something we can use against Stannis, his fleet, and the army sailing our way. I trust you do know of such a means to use in defense of this city? That my faith in your knowledge of King's Landing spanning well over several decades was not misplaced? Asked Naruto with Varys simply smiling a knowing smile at him. I know of one such weapon, Your Grace. However, I wish to inform you such a weapon will most likely be used only once, and in addition, it is highly unstable, replied Varys with Naruto looking at him intently. Given our odds of being overrun by Baratheon troops before we are all killed, violently butchered, or possibly burned alive by a crazy Lord of Light priestess. I'll take whatever secret you believe will help us win over that, said Naruto with Varys nodding, since the idea of being killed in such ways were not something the men in this room wanted. Not to ignore any possible advantage here, but shouldn't we see if there is a chance to gain possible allies outside of King's Landing? To bolster our odds of survival, much less victory in this future battle? Surely the Tyrells will side with us? Or the North, maybe Dorne? Given Myrcella will marry Prince Doran's son and you yourself have some kind of warrior bond with Prince Oberyn, House Martell might come to our aid if asked, said Tyrion while Naruto made a noise. House Martell won't do anything. While Prince Oberyn respects me, neither he nor his brother will commit troops to fight for the son of Robert Baratheon. Remember, my father did not disapprove of what Tywin Lannister ordered the Mountain to do to Elia Martell, or her beloved children for that matter. In fact, from what Varys told me of the incident when I regretfully asked about it, my father approved of their deaths. I did not wish to believe my surrogate mother Kashina when she told me the story, but with Varys confirming it, well, I wouldn't help me either if I was one of the two princes. As for the Tyrells, they hate all things Baratheon and only sided with Renly because the army he already had, and they thought a queen from their bloodline would be made through the marrying of Lady Margaery to my uncle. Now with Renly dead, the Tyrells just have to sit back, do nothing, and watch the war progress until the time is right to strike in the best possible manner for them. As for the North, they are too busy fighting the Lannisters, and from what Varys has told me earlier this morning, the Greyjoys have set sail to attack the North. A large chunk of Robb Stark's men have returned to repel them, so his troops won't be aiding us anytime soon, said Naruto, knowing they were going to be in a tight spot here when the fighting came. And asking my father for help would be out of the question too. Not to mention that the Vale won't help given how we now have Petyr Baelish rotting in the black cells for his failed escape attempt out of the city, added Tyrion, knowing his not-so-loving father Tywin Lannister would sooner betray Naruto in the end to put Joffrey on the Iron Throne or make Naruto owe him a huge debt outside of gold. No doubt my mother has informed her father of my actions and is demanding he do something about me before my presence as king starts to gain momentum among the small folk. Not that he could, given how trying would expose his troops to the north if they get wind of him moving to fight Uncle Stannis or myself, said Naruto, knowing Cersei would do just that and lie about what really happened just so her father, his grandfather, would do something violent against him. So calling for aid is out. Which means whatever Varys knows about the city, combined with our own understanding of war through experience, and what was written about the past, is our only hope of this city. Well, let's just come right out and say it. Not getting fucked up the ass, along with everyone living in it, said Tyrion with Naruto and Varys nodding. It won't be easy, Tyrion. But something tells me whatever Varys knows, it is one hell of a secret. And I would wager it is just the edge we need. But first, we need to fortify the entire city in the off chance our assumptions about my uncle were completely wrong. I need to speak to all the mason workers and building experts within the city about going over the city to reinforce its overall structure. Especially the Mudgate. Tyrion, go with Varys to get whatever secret weapon King's Landing possesses, and do so quietly. While Varys has a vast spy network, it is not the only network around, and I don't want someone within the walls of this city suddenly becoming fearful of Stannis to spy for him in the hopes of being granted some measure of mercy for selling us out, said Naruto with both men nodding since they could sort things out on their end of the plan without him. At once your grace, said Very, knowing exactly where to go to get exactly what they needed for the defense of King's Landing. Once you have what you need, come see me about it, and how we can use this weapon on my uncle's fleet. The fewer ships he has, the fewer men he can command. And while I do not wish to kill my house's bannerman, Uncle Stannis should have known better. We gave him and Renly a chance to have peace with each other, unite under my rule, deal with the war between House Stark and House Lannister before things got worse. While I don't know if Renly considered agreeing to my terms, the fact Stannis ended his life using dark magic makes it irrelevant, replied Naruto with Tyrion and Varys nodding. Given what I know of your uncle Renly when he served on the small council, I am sure he would have taken the offer, your grace, said Varys, since he had known Renly for a long time since Robert appointed him as the master of laws on the small council. I would like to think so too, Varys. Now I'll never know firsthand. In any case, we need to prepare the city for the inevitable. We have much to do and so little time, said Naruto before he stood up, and the others did as well to carry out their duties. They had work to do. Stark encampment sometime later. So the message sent to Renly Baratheon was real. That is interesting, said Roose of House Bolton while reading the two messages sent by Varys to Robb Stark and Renly Baratheon to compare the messages for any falsities made by the spider. Interesting is an understatement, Lord Bolton. If the spider sent us this and still has his head in the process, it means this new king sitting on the Iron Throne is indeed Robert Baratheon's true son and heir. The fighting between houses should come to an end, not increase, said Robb while seeing the other lords nodding. From what we have been able to learn, Tywin Lannister is not pleased in the slightest by this latest development. No doubt Cersei has informed him of the new king's treachery in taking the Iron Throne from Joffrey while claiming this Naruto is not hers, much less Robert Baratheon's son, said Roose Bolton with Robb nodding, since Cersei would say such things to her father to get the man to continue the war. We cannot worry about the Lannister as much as we would like, I'm afraid. What news back in the north? Asked Robb while wishing to know if his troops made it in time to repel the Greyjoy fleet. We received a raven not that long ago, your grace. Our troops were able to reinforce key areas of the north those sea-cunt Ironborn planned to attack. We covered a large area of the north along the coast, but our troops were still unsure which areas would require the heaviest defense. Fortunately, we still have some of the old veterans during the Greyjoy rebellion still alive back in the north, and they helped provided some insight on areas we might have missed, said John Umber, knowing a few of the older veterans too injured to fight could still help in providing some insight in where the Greyjoy fleet might hit the hardest. Are there any more men willing to return to the north to reinforce its defenses? Asked Robb, knowing some would like to do that, but others still wished to press forward. I don't think it is wise to send any more troops back to the north, your grace. We already sent a little over a quarter of the army back to defend it. If we send more back, it will only embolden the Lannisters to take the offensive, said Roose Bolton with Robb reluctantly nodding in agreement. He's right, Robb. As much as I would wish more men be sent back to defend it against the Greyjoys, you can't send too many of your forces back north, said Catelyn while she saw Robb let out a heavy sigh. Fine, what about the Kingslayer? Asked Robb, knowing their prize was the only thing keeping Tywin Lannister at bay. Alive. Filthy and stinking like shit, but still alive, said Lord Rickard Karstark grumbled while Robb nodded. Good, he needs to be kept alive and whole. I don't care about his smell, but we can't risk him being damaged. Tywin Lannister will pay any price to get his son back, but the value is only as good as the man's physical condition. Double the guards around his prison cell if you have to, Lord Karstark. Jaime Lannister will try anything to get out and return to his father, said Robb while Lord Karstark nodded. My son is watching him now. But I can easily put more men around his cell to ensure he doesn't get any ideas on escaping, said Lord Karstark, knowing the Kingslayer would try something soon and wished to ensure his son did not fall victim to the lion's treachery. Good, House Umber will also add some men of their own too. For now, we are going to move cautiously and stay on the defensive. We need to keep our supplies from becoming too thin and wait for word from the north about possibly reinforcing them should the Greyjoy fleet somehow smash through our defenses, said Robb while many nodded in full agreement, since defending the north that was their home was important to every man here. They needed to be careful at this stage of this war. One false move and they would lose too much with little to gain. King's Landing days later. Naruto had been busy. Non-stop busy. He had gathered all the architects, mason workers, and blacksmiths in the city to him to explain the situation to all of them. He didn't bother to sugarcoat the situation to them about what was heading their way with Stannis and his army intent of sacking the city. Naruto explained that the sacking wouldn't be enough for Stannis like it had been for Tywin Lannister and his army 20 years ago. He had revealed to them that the majority of the city would burn thanks to the Red Woman who converted Stannis to the Lord of Light religion. He told them if the city fell, a lot of people would be burned as a sacrifice. It didn't matter who was offered up. The rich, the poor, men, women, possibly even children. It would be like the Mad King all over again, but with religious reasons attached, which made such actions even worse. Which is why he needed their help to strengthen the walls of King's Landing and any other place their skills could be put to use. Not that anyone brought into this massive project would resist in the given time frame, as no one wanted to die, much less be burned alive as a religious sacrifice. Not only that, but Naruto got Sandor Clegane to up the training of the city watch, and had Bronn working with the Kingsguard with what time they had with both men rotating the training between the two groups. Sandor was a bit unsure of Naruto at first, which was understandable given the Hound had been around the young man's father, who had become a drunk for a king, and the giant Clegane was not impressed. Then there was Joffrey being the sadistic little shit he was with people, and his whiny voice made you want to stab your own ears with a rusty knife. But Naruto had proven himself in being a competent ruler in the short time he was king of the Seven Kingdoms. He quickly showed his commitment in wanting to help all the people in King's Landing and make their lives better. The first was dealing with the poor constantly begging for food and their need for shelter they did not possess. This was dealt with using the second situation Naruto had to face, which was getting them jobs. Naruto quickly set up job posts for those looking to either learn new skills or put the skills they already had to use. The latter who didn't have jobs either due to the war and they were refugees seeking a safe haven, or because the former master of coin had used his own financial influence to shut down stores, shops, and other honest places of business for the more seedy ones which he also secretly controlled. Speaking of the former master of coin, Naruto had found out the man had tried another escape attempt by trying to bribe the guards with wealth, and plenty of the most exotic whores in all the Seven Kingdoms. Under other circumstances, had Robert still been alive, or Joffrey was still king for that matter, these men would have set the man free and gotten away with it. But after Naruto of House Baratheon sat on the Iron Throne, the pursuit of the corrupt, and the punishing of those who committed such crimes put the fear of being punished into them. An example would be when all the men of the City Watch, who helped their late Lord Commander Janos Slynt betray Ned Stark when Joffrey took the Iron Throne as its king, were given a choice. Death, or the wall? Some of the men had tried a third option in the form of resisting, but were met instantly crushed by Naruto himself. He drew his crimson Valyrian sword, named it Akatsuki in the old Valyrian tongue meaning New Dawn, and sliced them all to pieces before demanding if anyone else wanted to resist his decision regarding traitors. None of them did. In fact, the remaining former City Watch members instantly on their knees, surrendering, and begged to be sent to the wall over facing his sword Akatsuki with him as its wielder. As for the sword itself, Naruto felt such a name was appropriate given how it shined in the light at just the right angle to signify a new dawn. The men guarding Littlefinger didn't want to get on the new king's bad side and all over a promise of gold and whores, which the guards knew the man could not produce given how they knew Petyr Baelish had all his assets seized and the brothels were put under new management. As such, the former master of coin could not give the guards gold, or women he promised them. Their lives were not worth empty promises by a snake of a man who betrayed the late hand of the king Ned Stark. You are becoming a real pain in the ass, Littlefinger. Another escape attempt? I should chop off your legs just to ensure you can't escape from this cell, said Naruto while he stood in front of the chained Petyr Baelish, who looked like he had seen better days. The former master of coin was, for the lack of a better word, filthy. His clothes were filthy. His face was sporting an unruly beard. His hair was longer and oily from the lack of a bath. If someone could see the man appear in a before and after setting, you wouldn't think they were the same man. I have been unjustly imprisoned. You didn't think I would sit idly by and be kept locked away in here, did you? Questioned Petyr Baelish with Naruto narrowing his eyes at him. Unjustly? You betrayed the hand of the king. You allowed the crown to be bankrupt and owed money to House Lannister and the Iron Bank. I have been gathering all the information and evidence I need to have you executed for past crimes, Littlefinger. I actually have more than enough to do it now, said Naruto with Petter looking up at him with a smug look on his face. But you won't. You need me in your back pocket, remarked Petter with Naruto scoffing at him. Don't flatter yourself. I need you alive for other reasons. Reasons I'm sure you already know about, but don't think I know. Namely your secret asset in the Vale by the name of Lisa Tully Aaron, said Naruto while Petter's smirk left him for a second. So you know. The spider told you, remarked Petter with Naruto nodding. He filled in the blanks for me after Pycelle confessed to being a conspirator in killing Jon Arryn and named names. Specifically you and Lisa Arryn, said Naruto with Petter scowled, knowing the former Grand Maester would sell them all out to save his old and worthless life. Ned Stark was right about one thing. Pycelle talks too much, said Petter Baelish while finding it ironic those words by Ned Stark would come back to haunt him. I'm sure he does, but he confessed enough for me to know what I needed to know. Lisa Arryn would never have poisoned her husband unless you told her to do it. You knew Jon was snooping around, trying to figure out why Joffrey looked nothing like Robert when all of his bastards did. It was only a matter of time before he put everything together and told my father the truth. And if that happened, well, my mother wouldn't be alive, right? And having the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms in your back pocket to use in a pinch was something you couldn't let go. So naturally, you got all the people involved in this little bloodline conspiracy of a horror together, told them the only way to keep this piece of news away from my father was to have Jon Arryn killed, and hoped the next hand of the king chosen by the king was someone you could easily manipulate, said Naruto, as he saw Petter scowled at having the truth of his schemes called out by the king, and the king being the son of Robert Baratheon. Yet Petter Baelish still had one more move to make. You do realize my imprisonment will no doubt reach Lady Arryn by now. If she hasn't already called her banners to march on King's Landing, she will be doing it soon once Stannis is done sacking the city, and killing you for the Iron Throne. She and I were quite close growing up, want to ensure I was rescued with the full might of the Vale, said Petter with Naruto smirking now before he moved beyond the means Littlefinger could see him and pinned the shocked man to the cell wall with a hand to his throat. The king's eyes glowing in the darkness of the cell that it actually terrified Petter Baelish something fierce deep within the dark corners of his mind. Even if that were true, I have already put plans into place to ensure that even in the off chance you escaped from King's Landing, you're a dead man walking. The crimes you have done, the proof behind it, I have it all ready to be sent to all the major houses throughout the Seven Kingdoms. Do you really think you can walk out of the black cells of King's Landing and think all will be well? Stannis, if he does become king, who do you think will among the first to burn as a sacrifice to the Lord of Light? What's that you are trying to say? You would go east to the Vale? Your lady Lisa will be cast out of the Vale by the lords there, and her son Robin will be forced into exile on suspicion of her son not being Jon's child, said Naruto while Petter's eyes widened slightly. The dark blonde-haired king saw it, and knew his mark was dead on about the man going even that far to secure a pawn in such a high place of position. What is this feeling? This feeling of terror and dread? Thought Petter with his eyes now filled with confusion over what he was experiencing. The North itself will destroy you for betraying Ned Stark. The West maybe? You think Tywin of House Lannister will protect you? Ha! The Lannisters will not receive you simply because you were the one manipulating the Queen Regent in being your pawn, and they will take that slight very seriously. House Tully will order you be killed on sight at Riverrun for your betrayal of one Catelyn Tully Stark. The South and the Reach will see you for the snake you really are and kill you the moment you set foot into their domain. Dorne? I'm good friends with Prince Oberyn, and I'm sure you would have no problem running his poisoned spear through your chest and take great joy in seeing you die. So by all means, Littlefinger, do try to escape. For once you do, everyone who is everyone in the Seven Kingdoms will be itching to personally take your head, whispered Naruto before he dropped Littlefinger on his butt and walked out of the room to let a slightly terrified Petter Baelish think about his words very carefully in his mind. And realized with a cold bitter truth that the king was 100% correct in his statement. Petter Baelish had no allies, no friends, no one who could help him. Even if he had the needed blackmail to get a few lords to help him, it was only temporary. A few supplies, a horse, and if he were luck, a stay in a castle for the night. Maybe 2 days if the lord was feeling particularly generous. But Petter knew such a thing was not possible given the information that would spread throughout the Seven Kingdoms. No one would take him in. A bounty would be placed on his head for any sell sword to claim before he reached the nearest port to take him to Essos or Bravos. Even going to Essos or Bravos was out of the question since Petter had no money to use in the first place. Not that gold or silver would matter at this point since no one would want to take the money of a man like him. The king was right. This cell was his only protection from those outside of it who wanted him dead. Lannisport at the moment. Cersei scowled heavily at the outside world from her chair near the window. The sun was shining, the birds were chirping, and the people were happy. Well, happy as happy can be given a war between House Lannister and House Stark. Refugees came into the city, seeking a safe haven due to their lives, homes, and families were destroyed. Hoping to rebuild their lives and survive the war along with the long winter rumored to come now that the longest summer in history had officially ended. How she hated them, all of them, every single life down below. Moving around, going from place to place. The mere sight of them made her want to puke. The mere thought of her being in the same city, much less the same room with only a handful of these peasants made her stomach want to retch. This was no place for her. No place for a Lannister of her standing. No place for queen or even a queen regent. Cersei knew that the only place for her was right at the center of all power in the Seven Kingdoms, and it was a King's Landing. It was the Iron Throne. Not here. Not Lannisport or Castle Rock. Not here where the power was only a fraction to that of King's Landing was located along with the seat of power that was the Iron Throne. An Iron Throne where her firstborn son, Robert's true son, was sitting on and making it perfectly clear he wanted nothing to do with her. Cersei had brought him screaming into the world and yet he had the nerve to scold her like she was a child. She may have ordered his life be that of a eunuch slave soldier, but as his mother, and the queen, it was damn well within her right to make him whatever she wished. And right now that just so happened to involve Robert's son she had with the man along with anyone else connected to her failed pig of a husband. She had whispered concerns to Joffrey about Robert's bastards possibly challenging him for the Iron Throne since they were of her husband's blood. It had happened before in the past with the Targaryens and commented to her son that if they were not all killed, the threat of usurping his rule as king was still in existence. Speaking of her son Joffrey, who she considered to be her one true firstborn son, the young lion was sitting on his throne commissioned to aid him in ruling over Lannisport as its king. Cersei had gone to her father after fleeing King's Landing, slightly wishing she could take Myrcella and Tommen with her before forgetting about them. She knew deep down that Naruto would never harm his half-siblings and Cersei needed to focus on the one child she needed to secure supreme power when the time was right. She had told her father what had happened, calling Naruto a pretender, and was not the real firstborn child lost all those years ago. Add to the fact Myrcella and Tommen were now hostages within King's Landing from what Cersei described only enraged Tywin Lannister even further. It took some considerable effort on Cersei's part to make the story she told her father appear believable. All the crying, begging, pleading for her father to believe she had been wronged by this false pretender of a king sitting on the Iron Throne. He had looked at her with a great deal of scorn and scrutinizing since he was not one to fool easily. But she was his daughter and Cersei knew that he knew she would not dare lie to him about such things. Which was why Cersei's lie worked after pleading her hardest to convince him to march his army against her enemies in the north and against Naruto in King's Landing when time permitted itself. At the moment, Tywin Lannister was with his army, prodding the defenses of the Wolf's army for a weakness, and had yet to find one. Not only that, but Jaime was still a prisoner of the North, and making sure no one outside of the northern bannermen could help him escape. Knowing her father, he wouldn't dare risk Jaime's life, and might even seek out a way to negotiate with the North by paying some kind of ransom for her twin brother. Of course, Cersei herself felt Jaime's capture was a personal slight against her, and wanted all of the North to die. Not only was her love a prisoner of the North, being reduced in strength, and glamour a lion like himself should show, but the man's substitute for warming her bed was not what you would call great in bed. He was enthusiastic once she forced him to do her bidding, but Lancel was no Jaime when it came to fucking her body. Under normal circumstances, she dared not risk fucking Lancel since her power base in Lannisport was not as strong as it had been in King's Landing, so keeping an eye out for spies or agents of her father in the city. But she was a woman with needs. Needs that Robert had never met. could not meet. The same with Lancel, but he was here while Jaime was not. Sadly, only Jaime had met them, and it made her want the man even more when he was eventually rescued. If he was rescued. At the same time, word came from the small folk about Stannis somehow besting Renly's much larger army by somehow having the younger Baratheon killed. Not that it mattered to Cersei, since one less Baratheon in the world the better for her, and if the gods were indeed on her side, Naruto would be next, with Stannis somehow falling at the same time. One way or another, Cersei would see her eldest son die, and place her pure son Joffrey on the Iron Throne, with the Queen Regent being the true ruler of the Seven Kingdoms.
That's all for now. If you enjoyed this video, then please like, share and do comments.